The Peterson family reunion was supposed to be a celebration. It was the family's 50th annual gathering, held at a sprawling park with catered barbecue, games for the kids, and enough relatives to fill a small town. I'd been married to Ryan for 3 years, and this was my third reunion, but I'd never felt more like an outsider than the moment they demanded my dead mother's money. It started innocently enough. We were sitting at one of the picnic tables, Ryan, his parents, his siblings, and a handful of aunts and uncles, when his Aunt Martha brought up my recent loss. "We're so sorry about your mother, Sophia," she said, patting my hand. "Such a tragedy to lose her so young." "Thank you," I replied quietly. My mother had passed away 2 months earlier after a short battle with cancer. The grief was still raw, still catching me at unexpected moments. "I heard she left you something," Uncle Bill chimed in, his tone a little too interested for comfort. "That must be a comfort, at least." Ryan shifted beside me. We'd discussed keeping the inheritance private, but apparently, he hadn't kept his word. "She did," I said carefully. "Some family heirlooms and a small amount of money." "How much?" Ryan's sister, Kelly, asked bluntly. Kelly, Ryan's mother, Deb, scolded, but her eyes were just as curious. $6,500, Ryan answered for me, plus some jewelry and photo albums. "My name is Sophia, and I'm a 29-year-old elementary school teacher. When I met Ryan 4 years ago, he seemed like everything I wanted: stable, family-oriented, kind. His large, close-knit family was so different from my small one. It had just been me and my mother for most of my life after my father died when I was 10. I thought marrying into the Peterson clan would give me the big family I'd always dreamed of. Be careful what you wish for. $6,500 is a nice chunk of change," Uncle Bill said, leaning back in his chair. "What are you planning to do with it?" "I haven't decided yet," I said. "It's been hard to think about. It was my mother's life savings." "Well," Aunt Martha said, her voice taking on a tone I didn't like, "now that you're a Peterson, that money belongs to the family." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "She's right," Ryan's father, George, nodded sagely. "In this family, we share everything. When Kelly got her settlement from that car accident, she put it in the family pot. When cousin Jim got his bonus, it went to fixing grandma's roof. That's how we do things." "The family pot?" I repeated, looking at Ryan for support. He was studying his beer bottle intently. "We take care of each other," Deb explained, as if talking to one of my first graders. "Right now, your cousin-in-law Brittany needs help with her student loans, and Uncle Bill's truck needs a new transmission. Your inheritance would really help." My mother's money would pay for Uncle Bill's truck? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds selfish," Kelly sniffed. "But yes, we're your real family now. Sophia, your mother is gone. We're all you have." The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. My mother had been dead for 8 weeks, and they were calling her gone like she was a lost sock. "Ryan," I turned to my husband, pleading with my eyes, "can you help me explain?" He finally looked up, and the expression on his face made my heart sink. "They have a point, Soph. I mean, family helps family, and you are part of this family now. So I should just hand over my mother's life savings to pay for random relatives' expenses?" "Not random relatives," George said sternly. "Family, there's a difference." "Is there?" I stood up, my hands shaking, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're asking me to dishonor my mother's memory by giving away what she worked her whole life to leave me. "Dishonor?" Martha's voice rose. "How dare you? We're offering to include you, to make you truly one of us, and you throw it in our faces? You're not offering to include me, you're demanding my inheritance." "Same thing," Bill shrugged. "In this family, what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. If you can't understand that, maybe you're not really Peterson material." I looked around the table. More relatives had gathered, drawn by the raised voices. Not one face showed sympathy for me. They all had that same expectant look, like vultures circling a carcass. "You know what?" I said quietly. "You're right. I'm not Peterson material." I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on the picnic table with a soft clink. The gathering went silent. "Sophia," Ryan jumped up. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done the first time your family treated me like an ATM instead of a person." I grabbed my purse. "I'm leaving." "You can't just leave," Deb shrieked. "We're in the middle of a family reunion." "No," I said, backing away. "You're in the middle of trying to rob a grieving daughter. There's a difference." Ryan grabbed my arm. "Sophia, stop being dramatic. Put your ring back on and sit down. We can discuss this like adults. I yanked my arm free. Adults don't demand other people's inheritance. Adults don't gang up on someone at a family gathering. Adults don't tell a grieving person that their dead mother doesn't matter anymore. I never said that, Kelly protested. You said you're my real family now, as if my mother wasn't real, as if her love, her sacrifices, her life meant nothing because she's gone. That's not what we meant, George started. It's exactly what you meant. And Ryan? I looked at my soon-to-be ex-husband. The fact that you're standing with them instead of me says everything I need to know about our marriage. I walked away to a chorus of shouts and protests. Ryan followed me to the parking lot, alternating between apologies and accusations. You're overreacting. They didn't mean it like that. If you just explain about your mom. I shouldn't have to explain why I want to keep my dead mother's money, I shouted, finally losing my composure. The fact that you don't understand that means we have bigger problems than your greedy family. Greedy? They're not greedy, they're just communal. Communal, right. Tell me, Ryan, in 3 years of marriage, how many times has the family pot helped us? When we needed a new water heater? When my car broke down? When I was between jobs for 2 months? His silence was answer enough. But now that I have money, suddenly I need to contribute to the family pot. Funny how that works. I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot. My phone started ringing immediately, but I ignored it. I drove to my best friend Heather's house and collapsed on her couch in tears. They wanted your mother's money? Heather was incredulous. At a family reunion? 2 months after she died? They said I'm part of their family now, so I should share everything. That's not how family works. That's how cults work. She was right. I realized. The Peterson family's closeness that I'd once admired was actually a toxic codependency where boundaries were forbidden and individual assets were communal property, but only when it benefited the collective. I stayed with Heather that night. The next morning, I had 47 missed calls and dozens of texts. They ranged from Ryan's pleading to his mother's guilt trips to Uncle Bill's threats about what happens to people who betray family. I screenshot everything and made my first call to a divorce attorney. Let me get this straight. The lawyer, Jennifer, said, your husband's family demanded your inheritance at a public gathering, and your husband supported them? That's right. And it's only been 2 months since your mother passed? 8 weeks exactly. I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry you married into a family of vultures. The good news is, inheritance is separate property. They have no claim to it whatsoever. Actually, I said, there's something else, the $6,500. That wasn't the full inheritance. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. Oh? My mother's house sold last week. After all the debts were paid and everything was settled, the total inheritance is $127,000. I only mentioned the $6,500 because that was her savings account. I didn't want to tell Ryan about the rest until I figured out what to do with it. Jennifer smiled. Smart woman. Let's keep it that way. Over the next 2 weeks, the Peterson family escalated their campaign. Ryan moved back in with his parents and they took turns calling my principal to tell her I was mentally unstable. Thankfully, she knew me well enough to ignore them. Showing up at my classroom during school hours, security removed them. Posting on social media about how I was stealing from family and disrespecting my husband. Having various relatives reach out with sob stories about why they needed my money. The social media posts backfired spectacularly. My mother's friends, who knew exactly how hard she'd worked and saved, came to my defense with a vengeance. Mrs. Chen, my mother's best friend, posted. Linda worked 2 jobs for 30 years to leave something for her daughter. She went without vacations, new clothes, and sometimes meals to save that money. Anyone who thinks they're entitled to it because they married into the family is delusional. The community rallied around me, my fellow teachers, my mother's co-workers from the hospital where she'd been a nurse. Even parents of my students reached out with support. The Peterson family found themselves on the receiving end of public shaming they hadn't expected. Then Ryan made a crucial mistake. He hired a lawyer to try to claim half the $6,500 in the divorce, arguing that inheritance received during marriage was marital property. His lawyer filed paperwork that listed the amount. Jennifer laughed when she saw it. He still doesn't know about the house? I never told him it sold. He knew Mom owned it, but he thought it was mortgaged to the hilt. He never asked about it after she died. Perfect. Let's keep it that way for now. The divorce proceedings were swift. Ryan couldn't afford a good lawyer. Turns out the Peterson family's communal approach to money didn't extend to helping with legal fees. His argument for the $6,500 fell apart quickly when Jennifer pointed out that inheritance is separate property in our state. During the final hearing, Ryan tried one last manipulation. Your Honor, my wife is hiding assets. I believe the inheritance is much more than $6,500. The judge looked at him tiredly. Do you have any proof of these additional assets? Well, no, but she's a teacher. How else could she afford such a good lawyer? Jennifer stood. My client's mother was a registered nurse for 30 years. She had excellent life insurance through her union, which paid for my services. Unless Mr. Peterson has actual evidence of hidden assets. This is merely speculation based on his own family's apparent financial difficulties. The judge agreed and granted the divorce. Ryan got nothing except the debt he'd accumulated buying toys he couldn't afford, boats, ATVs, gaming systems, all purchased with credit cards he'd opened without telling me. 6 months after that disastrous family reunion, I was living in my mother's house. I'd renovated it with part of the inheritance, creating a beautiful space that honored her memory while making it my own. The rest of the money was safely invested, growing for my future, maybe graduate school, maybe starting my own tutoring business, maybe just security. Ryan reached out once. About 4 months after the divorce was finalized, his family was in financial crisis. Uncle Bill's truck had completely died. Brittany had defaulted on her student loans. Kelly's husband had left her with significant debt. The family house, George and Deb's, was in foreclosure because they'd taken out a second mortgage to help various family members who never paid them back. Please, Sophia, Ryan begged over the phone. I know I screwed up, but they're going to lose everything. If you have any extra money from your mom. I have exactly $6,500 from my mother, I said calmly, which, according to your family, I should have put in the family pot. Tell me, Ryan, how much is in that pot now? It's different. It's not different, it's exactly the same. Your family created a system where everyone takes and no one saves, where boundaries are selfishness and keeping your own money is betrayal. That system was always going to collapse. So you won't help? I'll help the same way your family helped me when I needed it, which is to say, not at all. God, Sophia, when did you become so cold? I'm not cold, Ryan, I'm free from the manipulation, the guilt trips, the constant demands, free to honor my mother's memory and use her gift wisely, free to have boundaries without being called selfish. He hung up. I heard later through mutual acquaintances that the Peterson family had to sell the family home. They scattered to different states. The closeness they'd bragged about dissolving as soon as the money ran out. Ryan moved in with a cousin and was working 2 jobs to pay off his debts. The irony wasn't lost on me. They demanded my small inheritance because family shares everything, not knowing I had so much more. Their greed for $6,500 cost them access to someone who might have actually helped them if they'd just shown basic human decency to a grieving daughter. But they showed me who they were at that reunion. They showed me that I wasn't family, I was a resource. They showed me that my mother's death was just an opportunity to them. They showed me that Ryan would always choose them over me. Now I teach in the same classroom, but I come home to my mother's house, my house, where her pictures line the walls and her garden blooms in the backyard. I've started a scholarship fund in her name at the local nursing school. I volunteer at the hospital where she worked. I use her inheritance to honor her legacy, not to enable a toxic family's financial irresponsibility. Sometimes I think about that family reunion, how different my life would be if I'd just handed over the $6,500 to keep the peace. I'd probably still be married to Ryan, still being drained by his family's endless needs, still hiding the rest of my inheritance and feeling guilty about it. The money would be gone, spent on truck transmissions and student loans for people who barely knew my name, while my mother's memory was reduced to a dollar amount in the Peterson family pot. Instead, I stood up, I walked away. I chose to honor my mother over appeasing my husband's family, and in doing so, I discovered that the family I'd married into wasn't a family at all. It was a financial pyramid scheme dressed up as love. Real families don't demand your inheritance at reunions. Real families don't tell you your dead mother doesn't matter anymore. Real families support you in your grief, not exploit it for financial gain. The $6,500 they wanted so badly? It's part of a much larger inheritance now building my future, just as my mother intended. The Peterson family got nothing except a harsh lesson in what happens when you mistake a person for a piggy bank. If you're watching this and facing similar pressure, remember, inheritance isn't just money, it's your loved one's final gift, their legacy, their last act of love. Anyone who tries to take that from you, spouse, in-laws, or anyone else, is showing you who they really are, believe them. And sometimes, the best family reunion is the one you walk away from. Thank you for watching my story. Your inheritance, like your boundaries, is yours to protect.
It had been nearly 3 days since I had lost contact with my husband. Despite his prior notification that he would be unresponsive for a while, my growing concern prompted me to consider calling the police. Just as I contemplated this step, a phone call interrupted my thoughts. It was one of his subordinates, saying, "Senior, your husband has been killed in an accident." Shocked and unable to process the news, I rushed to the hospital, only to find my husband transformed. My name is Lisa, a 28-year-old woman married for 2 years. We live together, both working for an ID company. Although we aspire to have children, it hasn't happened yet. My husband, Hiro, 2 years my senior, is dedicated to his work. I vividly remember the day he joyfully announced his potential promotion. His happiness was contagious, and despite his tireless efforts, I couldn't help but feel proud. However, as the days passed, I noticed a change in Hiro's behavior. He started working even longer hours, often returning home well past midnight, and working on weekends became a regular occurrence. The once frequent outings on our days off gradually ceased. I couldn't understand why he seemed unaffected by the relentless workload. Moreover, his attitude toward me grew colder. Despite my concerns, he showed no signs of fatigue. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, questioning the strangeness of it all. Determined to address the growing concerns about my husband's changed behavior, I waited for him to return from his overtime work. As he walked through the door, exhaustion evident on his face, I mustered the courage to broach the subject. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I asked. His response was curt. "What is it?" "I'm tired and want to go to bed early." I pointed out his habitual late-night phone use before sleep, suggesting it might be affecting his rest. His defensive reaction was swift. "What I do with my free time is up to me, right?" Undeterred, I questioned his seemingly excessive workload, especially after his recent promotion. His expression momentarily hardened, and I seized the opportunity to express my concerns about the toll it was taking on him. "You work too many holidays, and it's not fair to make your employees work so hard," I said. His response was dismissive. "I can't help it. You can't understand what I do. I'm tired, and I'm coming home, so don't meddle." With that, he left the living room, leaving me in turmoil. The unease lingered, and one fateful day, after a work-related accident that left me bruised and hospitalized, I desperately tried to reach him for support. However, my attempts were met with silence. Hours passed, and frustration built as my husband remained unresponsive. Finally connecting with him, I explained the urgency of the situation. His response, filled with indifference and an unexpected lack of concern, left me speechless. "I'm sorry, but I'm in an urgent situation." "What do you mean?" "I was in an accident on my way home and had to be hospitalized. I have pain all over my body, but they said it was nothing life-threatening." "What are you doing to me?" His callous reply, urging me not to get into an accident when he's busy and disclaiming responsibility for my car, left me stunned and at a loss for words. I had asked my husband to bring me a change of clothes, a simple request in light of the accident that had left me hospitalized. However, his response was far from supportive. "Why should I do that? I'm tired from work, and I have to go all the way to the hospital for some idiot who had an accident because of her carelessness," he retorted, labeling me as the cause of the mishap despite it being the fault of the other driver. His harsh words stung, and he refused to come to the hospital or respond to my messages, leaving me on my own. The abrupt end to our call resonated in my ears, bringing me to tears. It was disheartening to see how indifferent he had become, prioritizing work over my well-being. With no family nearby, I had no option but to procure what I needed from the store. Despite numerous attempts to contact him, 3 days passed without a response. The worry intensified as I considered various possibilities, including the unsettling thought that he might have been in an accident himself. just as my concern reached its peak, a knock echoed in my hospital room. Answering the door, I was greeted by Yuri, a colleague I typically got along with. Grateful for her visit, I explained the situation. Yuri expressed her surprise upon learning about the accident and reassured me that, despite the severity of the incident, I was fortunate to be doing well. As we conversed, the visiting hours came to an end, and Yuri, preparing to leave, hesitated. Her troubled expression hinted at something unspoken, as if she harbored concerns or information she was hesitant to share. Anxiety gripped me as I nervously questioned Yuri. Is something wrong? She hesitated before responding. I'm sorry, Lisa. I don't think this is the right time to say this, but I saw something. I saw Lisa's husband walking with Misa. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. What? When was that? I asked, my mind racing to piece together the timeline. Misa, a junior employee at our company, had been under my mentorship since her early days. We still shared weekly lunches, maintaining a connection that spanned several years. The last time Misa and my husband crossed paths was likely at our wedding. Could it be that they had met then? The impossible notion sprouted in my mind, and I couldn't dismiss the worst-case scenario. Yuri recounted her observations from 3 days ago, mentioning Misa carrying a case. A sinking feeling enveloped me. I contacted my husband's office, confirming Yuri's account. He had indeed taken paid leave 3 days ago. The pieces fell into place, confirming my fears. The man I loved and the junior colleague I trusted had betrayed me simultaneously. The realization struck hard. Had the relationship begun even before his intensified work schedule? Each instance of his suspicious behavior replayed in my mind, and the truth became painfully clear. Subconsciously, I had been calling him repeatedly in the past few days, knowing he wouldn't answer. Yet, I refused to let him off easily, persistently ringing until he finally answered, his voice filled with displeasure. What's the matter with you? You're so persistent. I told you I wouldn't answer for a while. What's so important that you can't respect that? I'm working every day. I'm at work every single day, my husband retorted defensively. Unconvinced, I countered. You've taken a holiday until tomorrow. What on earth are you doing? His hesitation was palpable, as if he still believed he had room for deception. Swiftly, he began to weave excuses, denying any time off. I cut through his attempts to play dumb, stating, I'd already checked with the company. I know everything. Just confess. Frustrated and perhaps realizing he could no longer conceal the truth, my husband admitted, I'm exposed, right? That's right. I'm traveling with Misa. If you understand, don't interrupt me, ugly. His callous words stung. When I pressed further, he callously added, I'll divorce you when I get back. Don't bother me. The phone call ended abruptly, and with it, the love I had for him transformed into intense hatred. The betrayal was unforgivable. Determined to take matters into my own hands, I vowed revenge. However, before I could act, fate intervened. The next day, discharged from the hospital and able to move around, I'd opened my phone to seek legal assistance for revenge. As I scrolled through options, my husband's name flashed on the screen with a call from his faithful partner, Misa. Startled, I hesitated, realizing there was no escaping the confrontation that lay ahead. I answered the phone with trepidation, and Misa's trembling voice immediately reached my ears. Hello, Lisa Sr. I'm sorry. It's common sense to apologize in person, not over the phone. I responded, trying to maintain composure despite the unexpected call. Acknowledging the unconventional nature of the apology, Misa pressed on, explaining, Yes, that's right, but I don't have time for this. Before I could react, she dropped a bombshell that left me in shock. Lisa Sr., your husband died in an accident. Stunned, I struggled to find words. What are you talking about? Hiro is on a business trip with you right now, isn't he? I countered, desperately clinging to the hope that there was some mistake. Misa proceeded to share a heartbreaking story. According to her, on their way home from the airport, both she and my husband were involved in an accident. Hiro had been hit by a car, and despite her immediate call for an ambulance, he showed no signs of life. The news was too much to comprehend. I hung up the phone, quickly informed the nurse of the situation, and rushed to my husband's side. Contrary to my expectation of finding him in a mortuary, Hiro was still alive, but seriously injured. The accident had left him with broken bones, and he was now on crutches. Amidst the chaos, Misa arrived breathless. Her shock was palpable as she realized my husband was still alive. Knowing that Hiro was in critical condition, I informed Misa that we would discuss the matter at a later date and decided to leave the hospital that day. In the ensuing days, Hiro managed to survive, but the accident left him paralyzed from the waist down, confining him to a wheelchair. His parents-in-law, upon learning the details of the affair trip, expressed fury. Despite any personal feelings they may have had, my in-laws unequivocally scolded him, blaming him for bringing this upon himself through the affair. I made a call to both Misa and my husband, intending to discuss the situation. Upon entering my husband's hospital room, I was taken aback by the loud argument that greeted me. "If you hadn't pushed me that time, I wouldn't be in this situation. It's all your fault," my husband accused angrily. Misa retorted, "You're the one who suggested we go that way. Don't blame others. You insisted on the trip, and that's what got us into this mess. I paid for the whole trip. I want my money back in payment for my medical treatment." The heated exchange continued, each blaming the other without a hint of awareness regarding my presence. Frustrated, I reached my limit. With a forceful push of the hospital room door, I took a deep breath and sternly declared, "Stop arguing. This is neither the time nor the place. Hiro needs us now more than ever, and we must support him. You cheated on your wife in the first place. Take your blaming elsewhere." Lissa Sr., finally noticing me, tensed up. Unperturbed by her reaction, I continued, "How can you two fight under such circumstances? Do you realize the gravity of the situation?" Hiro, the first to respond, attempted to reassure me. "Lisa, don't worry. I'm breaking up with this woman. I only have you after all." Shocked, I couldn't contain my disbelief. "What are you saying now? We're getting a divorce, right?" I exploded, frustrated by the nonchalant expression on my husband's face. "You said it yourself. You claimed you would divorce me if you left or had a fight with your lover. Are you out of your mind? I can't live my life with you, Lisa." "Why?" my husband declared, his tone cutting through the air. Shocked, I responded, "I thought you loved me. Don't be ridiculous. You were the one who blustered and said you were divorcing me. Then, when things got bad, you went back together. Don't ever show your face in front of me again. You'll regret it for the rest of your life." My vehement yelling left my husband in a state of shock, and Misa, who was present, turned pale and trembled. Later that day, I was discharged from the hospital and decided to return to my parents' home for a while. Through my lawyer, the divorce from Hiro was finalized. Both he and Misa were charged alimony, which they paid in a lump sum. As a consequence of this fiasco, Hiro was fired from his job. The money he had spent on the affair was deducted from his company expenses. Additionally, his paralysis from the waist down led to his dismissal, leaving him with only a claim for damages against the company. Finding a new job with his physical condition would prove challenging. Word of Misa's affair with my husband spread throughout the company, resulting in a sudden turn of sentiments against her. Unable to bear the hostile atmosphere, Misa repeatedly missed work without permission. Eventually, she submitted a resignation letter. Now the two of them are unlikely to lead a decent life again. Despite their downfall, I feel no sympathy for them. It's a disaster of their own making. On the other hand, I rented an apartment near my office and started a new life. Colleagues approached me out of concern or curiosity, and while my feelings are mixed and indescribable, I aim to enjoy my own life without being pushed around by others. Silly rumors will soon be put to rest, and I look forward to embracing a new chapter on my terms. Second story. My husband Jack made a startling revelation after receiving his inheritance. "I don't need a life with you anymore. I'm inheriting $5 million. I don't need you when I have that money. His cold words signaled the end of our marriage, marking the culmination of a long period of living together where I felt like nothing more than an obstacle. Little did he know, a significant secret was associated with the $5 million inheritance. Mom, is it true that Grandpa is in critical condition? My daughter Sophie's unexpected question caught me off guard. The serious health problem of Ethan, Jack's father, was supposed to be a secret between Jack and me. Did you get that information from your dad? The only one who might have told Sophie was Jack. Yes, and on a call from Dad, he told me to renounce Grandpa's inheritance. Sophie's words unsettled me, and because of this single phone call, my peaceful life was about to be disrupted. A few days after the call with Sophie, Ethan passed away peacefully. Since getting married, I had lived with Jack's parents, supporting them when their health worsened. It had been 5 years since Jack's mother passed away, and now, with Ethan's passing, the funeral went smoothly. However, just when I thought I was freed from tension, my husband's behavior changed dramatically. "What are you doing here? Why hasn't it been cleaned properly lately?" Jack frequently pointed out minor dust and small stains. "I'm sorry, I must have missed it. I'll clean it right now. This place isn't cleaned well either." "Do you really clean every day?" "Of course, I clean with the same routine as always." Even though I cleaned just as always, I couldn't understand why Jack was so angry, but it seemed the issue wasn't just about cleaning. "Why are you serving this? I wish you'd pay more attention to the taste when you cook." It's hard when the dishes I put effort into are criticized one by one. Even the dishes he used to enjoy were now unappreciated. "Is there something bothering you lately?" I plucked up the courage to ask, but it seemed to worsen his mood. "It's useless to deny it. To be honest, the food you make isn't good. I've been tolerating it because my parents never complained, but I've always felt its tastelessness deep down." Jack's words pierced my heart coldly and sharply. It was the first time he had ever criticized me so severely. I knew when Jack was this upset, anything I said would only fan the flames. My mom always cleaned and did laundry perfectly, and at meal times, she cooked with care without cutting corners. "You're nothing like her. I've been patient, but I can't stand it any longer." This was the first time he compared me to his mother and criticized me. All I could do was reflect deeply on myself. "I'm truly sorry. I couldn't have imagined that he valued my cooking so little." Jack always used to smile and say it's delicious when we first got married, and his mother gave me cooking advice. To think he has always found my cooking tasteless, tears started to flow uncontrollably. "Do you think anything will change if you cry? Your tears mean nothing now. Don't show them to me. Lately, everything just feels so tedious." After saying those words, Jack suddenly stood up and left the house, slamming the door behind him. As he walked away, I called out, "Jack, where are you going? Come back." But it seemed he didn't hear me. My mind was in turmoil, unable to keep up with this sudden change, unable to understand what had just happened. Until a few months ago, we were a couple who shared everything, holding hands, sharing the small joys of daily life, and tackling minor grievances together. I couldn't fathom why we had grown so distant, and then it hit me. I remembered the content of Sophie's call. It was about Ethan's inheritance. There was a hint of hesitation in Sophie's voice that night. Jack had come home much later than usual, and I missed the opportunity to ask him about it. Was there something going on? Perhaps Jack had discovered some information about the inheritance and wanted to keep it to himself. I tried to approach Sophie, wondering why they were discussing inheritance while Grandpa was still in good health. She expressed doubts about Jack's actions and mentioned conveying the same to him. "If the way the inheritance is divided doesn't change, it will all fall into my hands." Considering Sophie, I believed this was the best way, recalling Jack's recent cold behavior towards her. Doubts crossed my mind. If he intended to take all the inheritance and abandon me? This thought tightened my chest, and tears welled up in my eyes. In my pain, I became acutely aware of the sounds around me. Just as the room became eerily silent, the sudden ring of the phone echoed throughout. I didn't feel up to answering, but it could be important. Checking the caller ID, I saw Jack's name, the same Jack who had left the house earlier. Picking up felt tiresome, but I also didn't want to face any backlash for ignoring it, so I hesitantly answered. "What are you doing? Don't keep me waiting. I'm running out of time." His sudden, authoritative tone took me by surprise. He was indeed stubborn at times, but he wasn't someone who would yell without a reason. In the past, shocked by his changed demeanor, I let out a slight sigh, hoping he wouldn't notice. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "I have something to talk about. I'll be home soon. Stay home and wait for me." Lately, his voice sounded unmistakably colder than before. I replied with a brief "okay" and promptly hung up. Looking at the clock, more than 3 hours had already passed since Jack went out. I had been crying, overwhelmed with confusion and pain, and I hadn't realized how much time had passed. After a while, I heard the door open and Jack's footsteps. A sweet scent of body wash, one we didn't use at home, wafted from him. That unfamiliar smell intensified the pain in my chest. "I'll be straight. I want to end our relationship. As a token of gratitude, I'll give you $220,000. His words were something I have feared deep down. Still facing this reality, the shock was so immense that I felt tears drying up. "I'm genuinely tired of you not managing things at home. I want to live peacefully in my old age." Linda had dreamt of a peaceful old age. However, the one who began to shatter that dream was none other than Jack. In front of her, he continued, "Why are you here?" Her words trailed off as she searched for what to say. Jack looked at her with a smug smile. At that moment, a bright ringtone from Jack's cell phone filled the room, the unfamiliar tone clearly different from his usual one. "I'm sorry, but I haven't finished my errands yet." Linda sensed a slight softness in Jack's voice, different from how he usually sounded towards her. It felt somewhat kinder and more intimate. Furthermore, the sweet scent of body wash in the room, the unique ringtone from earlier, and the changed tone of his voice. All these events hinted at something he might be hiding. Linda whispered quietly so that Jack wouldn't hear. I knew it. He had been too overt about his external affair. Considering the inheritance he might be getting soon, the alimony might be insignificant for him, even if his infidelity becomes evident. After ending his call, Jack looked down at Linda with emotionless, cold eyes. "My intentions haven't changed. I want you to sign this document. I'll contact you later. Make sure to have it signed by then. I don't plan to come back to this house. Remember, this house is now yours." Without uttering another word or even looking at my face, Jack headed towards the door. What did our long marital life of 40 years mean? A few days later, I found myself in a lawyer's office, gathering information about Jack's actions and Ethan's inheritance. As I explained everything to our daughter, Sophie, her complexion changed. It was painful to reveal our mistakes to our daughter, but out of love for me, Sophie let her emotions out and shed tears. She then showed strong determination to confront Jack and introduced me to a lawyer to support us. "Hello, I am Robinson. I will be handling your case. I will support you to the best of my ability," said the woman named Robinson, sitting across from me. She seemed to be in her late 40s, exuding a calm aura. Her neatly groomed hair and professional attire gave off a reassuring vibe. Her clear way of speaking provided me with a sense of reassurance. "I'm truly sorry for approaching you suddenly. My name is Lily Johnson. I'm a bit nervous since it's our first meeting under such circumstances," I admitted. "That's all right. I had already received some information from Sophie, so I was able to talk in detail with peace of mind," reassured Robinson. Based on what I had researched over the days and the information Robinson separately gathered for me, we verified the facts. My husband doesn't have any siblings, so if our daughter Sophie renounces the inheritance, the huge fortune, which amounts to about $5 million, will all go to my husband. Also, his affair with a woman named Jennifer began at a bar they happened to visit, and it seemed their relationship continued for about 6 months. She seems quite different from me, and I was curious about what happened between her and my husband. Through joint investigation with Mrs. Robinson, We were able to uncover an important fact that my husband might not yet know about. Mrs. Robinson then asked me, "How do you intend to proceed from here?" in a gentle tone with soft eyes. "Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I deeply appreciate it," I replied, smiling towards Mrs. Robinson. After a brief exchange, I handed over the fee for the procedures, and I quietly left the office. 5 days later, I received a call from Jack on my cell phone. He proposed a meeting at a quiet cafe, and I arrived a bit earlier than our scheduled time. The cafe was surprisingly empty, and the owner warmly welcomed me, suggesting I pick any seat. I chose a seat by the window to enjoy the calm outside view. After a while, the entrance bell rang, and in my line of sight stood Jack and his new girlfriend Jennifer. When Jack saw me, he smirked with a sense of pride. "Are you prepared for the divorce?" was his surprising first statement. It seemed he was convinced he was in full control. "Is this your new associate?" I hadn't expected him to bring her to such an important discussion, and I was astonished at his decision. I wondered if he was the man I once deeply loved, and whether he had changed because he cheated, or if he was always like this. "Are you Jack's wife, right?" "My name is Jennifer. I've recently started dating him," she said, smiling. I couldn't quite grasp the meaning of her sudden smile. "I've heard a lot about you from Jack. Seeing you in person, you do look a bit aged. I wonder how Jack endured all these years. Indeed, Jennifer seems to take great care of her appearance. She looks much younger than her actual age. In her 60s, compared to her, I might look my age, but I couldn't accept the way she phrased it. It's those tendencies of yours I warned you about, but indeed, I did think that. But Jack, if it were me, I would cherish you more," I said. Jack replied, "I don't want you to overthink it anymore. I just want you to file the divorce papers." I was taken aback by Jack's expected attitude. "Hold on. There's something I want to discuss," I said, and a hint of confusion was evident on Jack's face. "What are you getting at? Is it all about your father's inheritance? Is that why, after all our years of marriage, you're deciding this?" I wanted to know the truth behind all these events. "I can't see how my father's inheritance and you are related. That's solely my father's. I've heard detailed stories about your father's vast inheritance from Sophie. I know how much it's worth, so what? That inheritance isn't for you to take." But I'll answer. Actually, more than the inheritance itself, the end of taking care of my parents is one of the reasons I want to part with you. Just a caregiver role. How had Jack seen me only as a caregiver and not the loving wife I used to be? I don't even have the energy to cry. Can we speed this up, Jack? And I want to start our new life. Besides, have you still not let go of Jack? Don't make me repeat myself. I'm not thinking of a new start with you. Now I want you to file the divorce papers. Waves of emotion struck my heart with intense anger and deep sadness. My hand quivered slightly. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out the divorce papers, but my name wasn't written yet. The situation isn't settled yet. To hand it over, you remember promising me the house and money, right? I clearly remember when we talked about it. Yeah, I did say that. I'm a man of my word, so I plan to give you the house and money, Jack replied. You say you're kind, but a truly kind person wouldn't just use their wife as a mere caregiver and then abandon her. So I'm demanding rightful compensation of $30,000 and the rights to the house. What compensation? When we talked about money, it was supposed to be $20,000. You always nitpick at the very end. Your attitude of trying to pay me the absolute minimum is so obvious. But the difference of $10,000 means a lot to me. So, I believe $30,000 as compensation is fair. Your girlfriend, it's Jennifer, right? I thought of claiming from her too, but in lieu of that, I want to settle for $30,000, and I intend to sign the divorce papers right here in front of you. Jennifer reacted unexpectedly, first commenting about $30,000 being fine. Jack, pay it if you're satisfied with it. With Jennifer's statement, Jack finally accepted the alimony of $30,000. Now we needed Jack's signature on the land title change document Mrs. Robinson prepared and the notarized alimony agreement. Jack looked surprised by my preparations, but I calmly said, "I have a life to continue," and I eased his suspicions. We took out our respective seals, lined up at the designated spot, and Jack smiled as if he anticipated something. "So, Linda, will you sign the divorce papers right now?" "Understood," I said. "Here's the divorce paper." As I carefully wrote my name and firmly stamped it, Jack couldn't hold back his laughter and laughed out loud. "With this, you and I no longer have any relationship. Also, I have something to tell you. Actually, I'm set to inherit $5 million, so I didn't need someone like you anymore. Thanks for the divorce. What a foolish ex-wife you had, letting go so easily for just $30,000. Behind me, as I left, the loud laughter of Jack and Jennifer echoed. I hurriedly left and headed to City Hall. My only goal now is to complete this procedure as quickly as possible and sever ties with the two of them completely. They might be laughing happily now, but I wondered how long their happiness would last. A month later, I quickly sold the house I received from Jack, prepared for a new life, and decided to live near my daughter Sophie, who planned to start her life near her husband's parents' home. Since Jack's mother lived nearby, I thought there would inevitably be moments I'd feel cautious. Contrary to my concerns, Sophie's husband warmly welcomed me and was always considerate, which I found very reassuring. My daughter Sophie seemed angry at Jack's actions at first, but when I told her a certain fact, her expression changed completely, and she smiled brightly. I had a hunch that Jack would soon realize my plan. As proof, I deliberately didn't change my mobile number. The day that intuition became a reality came sooner than I thought. From the afternoon, my mobile rang repeatedly, and sure enough, it was Jack. He called many times, but at first I purposely didn't answer. After receiving repeated calls, I finally picked up. "Hello, why are you doing this?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "What's the matter?" "You called out of the blue, raising your voice. What's the problem?" "Where are you right now?" I thought he might have visited the house we used to live in, but in reality, that house had already been sold, and the new tenant might have moved in, or it could have become an empty lot. Considering this fact, the image of Jack's panicked demeanor surfaced in my mind, and I felt a little sorry for him. "Since we've decided to divorce, there's no need for you to be involved anymore." "Where did Sophie go?" "I can't find her." "It seems he went to Sophie's previous house." Of course, she wasn't there, and I managed all the information and procedures related to Sophie's husband's family home, so Jack had no way of knowing. "He seems to have hit a dead end and contacted me." I answered, "Yes, actually, Sophie has moved to a new place." "Why didn't you tell me something so important? Moreover, did you know about that too?" "It seems my husband finally realized the truth." "By that, are you referring to the significant hidden debt that Ethan had?" Actually, when I investigated Ethan's inheritance in detail, I was shocked by the amount of the inheritance. But at the same time, I found out about a considerable hidden debt. Probably, while he was alive, he estimated he could repay the debt with about $5 million and hid that fact from us. However, he passed away midway through repayment, and the hidden debt was left neglected. And when you officially receive an inheritance, you are also obliged to inherit such hidden debts. Jack was blinded by the allure of easy money and neglected thorough verification and investigation. That was his big mistake. So, I have a question. Did you really know about my dad's debt? Information is easy to come by. It becomes clear to anyone with a little search. That's why I noticed it. I imagined Jack turning red with anger on the other end of the phone. "Anyway, what about the promised money? What about the money you intended to return?" I had my suspicions, but his real goal was money after all. Besides, about that property. If I had known about my dad's debt from the beginning, I wouldn't have gotten involved at all. I understand how you feel. I thought it deep down, but I chose not to say it. But think about it. Putting aside the money issue for a moment, you got to marry a very attractive woman, right? Isn't that pretty lucky? Of course, I don't know if Jennifer chose Jack because of his assets or if it was truly love. As soon as Jennifer found out about my debt, she left me. I thought she would. It's exactly as I expected. Linda, think about it. How about starting over with me? I feel deceived by Jennifer. I just realized now you're the person I really need. The tone of Jack's voice suddenly dropped and became emotional. I wondered if he has forgotten everything he did to me. I'm cornered. Every day, I'm being rushed by collectors, and the debt I can't repay is piling up. I'm at my limit. I really feel my life is in danger. Help me, please. Even after hearing his desperate plea, I calmly thought, if I were in this situation, would Jack help me? I carefully chose my words and took a deep breath before answering. Right now, I'm living peacefully and am truly satisfied. Since we'll be departing from this place today, could you please relocate? We'll also cover the $473 monthly loan. With my daughter on the way, we no longer require your assistance. All right then, please take care of everything from now on. Despite the substantial support we provided to our in-laws, they easily shifted their trust to the younger sister. As I packed my belongings at the entrance, I shared something crucial with them. By the way, there seems to be a misunderstanding. The monthly loan repayment is— As I spoke, their faces turned pale in shock. My name is Emily, a 35-year-old office worker. I've been married to Tom for 3 years. We met through a mutual friend who believed we'd be perfect for each other, and that intuition proved correct. Tom and I were drawn to each other from our first conversation. Tom felt the same, and we started dating. 2 years later, he proposed, and I happily accepted. Our families supported our marriage, and we had a wonderful wedding attended by many. After our honeymoon, we began our life together, sharing household chores and enjoying a peaceful, stress-free life. Tom, having lived alone for a long time, was a great cook, which was a huge help. We cooperated in all household tasks, and we were grateful for each other's company. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, and our bond remained as strong as when we were newlyweds. However, a significant event occurred when Tom's father fell seriously ill. We rushed to the hospital, and after a week of tests, he was released, but concerns about a recurrence lingered. Recognizing that they might not handle another emergency, Tom proposed the idea of living together. "What if we lived together with my parents?" he suggested. It was an expected proposal, and I agreed. We quickly discussed the idea with our in-laws. "Live together?" Tom's mother inquired. "It's not a bother at all," I reassured. "Emily and I are worried about both of you." "Thank you, both of you." Our in-laws, teary-eyed and grateful, accepted our offer, reflecting their underlying anxiety. We promptly moved in with them, and the mother-in-law, understanding that both of us worked, took the lead in household chores. Thanks to her, we could focus on our jobs, and the father-in-law, now retired, spent his days resting at home, which significantly improved his health. Life was joyous, and we all got along wonderfully without any issues. However, our in-laws eventually made a certain proposal. "I've been thinking about this for a while. How would you feel about building a new 2-family house?" the father-in-law suggested. "Huh, but this house isn't particularly spacious or comfortable for 4 adults. If Tom and Emily have children in the future, it'll be even smaller," the mother-in-law explained. "Considering the future, I've been thinking of building a bigger house where we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives. However, it's not something we can afford with just my savings. We will need to discuss and decide together." Tom and I were surprised by the proposal, but we thought it wasn't a bad idea. While the current in-laws' house wasn't too small, it wasn't particularly spacious or comfortable either. Long-term living there might lead to stress building up between us. Perhaps buying a new house where everyone can live comfortably is a good idea. After discussing it with Tom, we decided to go along with the father-in-law's proposal. Subsequently, the 4 of us visited real estate agencies to explore various properties. We considered making it barrier-free for our in-laws and ensuring there were plenty of rooms for future children. Ideally, the new house should be in a safe area. close to both a hospital and a train station, with easy access to grocery stores. Considering everyone's requirements, it seemed like it might be pricey. However, if we were going to live there for the rest of our lives, we didn't want to compromise too much. Every family member felt the same way, so with determination, we decided to build our dream house, even if it cost a lot. After some time, our new home was finally completed. The exterior and interior were both new and beautiful, lifting our spirits just looking at it. This is really amazing. I can't be sick anymore. I want to stay healthy and live here for as long as possible. The in-laws expressed their joy. My husband and I were equally excited, realizing that this would be the house that would be with us for our entire lives, even when we have kids. I want to play catch in the garden and have barbecues. That sounds great. Let's make lots of family memories here. We were overflowing with excitement and joy. Living in the house turned out to be truly comfortable, and it felt like the pinnacle of happiness. Being in a comfortable home made me even more enthusiastic about my work. Subsequently, my work went very smoothly, and both my public and private lives were fulfilling. I genuinely felt grateful for buying this house. The months passed in the blink of an eye, and 2 years had passed in this house. We continued to have a good relationship with our in-laws as always, believing that the days ahead would be filled with happiness. However, at least in this place for life in our new home, something unexpected happened. It was when the sister-in-law and her husband visited our new house. While this really is a nice house, it's not fair that only you guys get to live here. What are you talking about? We discussed and decided to buy this house with our parents, but I can't help but feel envious. When we were still living in a cheap winter, it feels like you're living beyond your means. The sister-in-law often visited our house during holidays and always expressed her envy. Every time, she would accuse us of being unfair. We've been paying the mortgage for this house, and it's quite a hefty amount every month. We're living within our means, earning enough to pay for this house, so there's no reason for her to complain. If we were to live here with the in-laws, it would be so much fun, don't you think? What? Can you even afford the mortgage for this house? My husband and I exchanged a glance. The sister-in-law probably just blurted out without giving it much thought. However, her careless words started to move my in-laws' hearts. It would be lovely if Kana could move and live here together. Yes, it would liven things up. Hey, what are you two talking about? Haven't we been living together all this while? Come on, I was just saying. Exactly. There's no need to panic, right? Ha ha ha. While the in-laws tried to brush it off, it was evident that they were enticed by the idea of living with the sister-in-law. The in-laws seemed to have a particular affection for her, even more so than for Tom. She is a beauty with delicate features and looks like a doll from her childhood. Being 4 years younger than Tom and born when the in-laws were older, they doted on her even more. This pampering led her to become quite spoiled, and Tom had to deal with her demanding nature. Having heard all this from Tom, I was always wary of my sister-in-law. For a while after we got married, Tom and I were both caught off guard because she didn't seem to be giving us any trouble. However, recently, she has been increasingly eyeing our new house. It seems she frequently visits the house during the day when we're at work. Oh, Emily, you're back. Then I'll be leaving now. Ha. I wish you'd stay a bit longer, but Tom and Emily might find it inconvenient. I don't think it's a nuisance. You might say that, but it's evident in your eyes and behavior. Unwanted guests should leave quickly. See you, Mom and Dad. Take care. When the sister-in-law left, the in-laws were visibly upset. They looked as if they wished she stayed longer. Even though they didn't voice their feelings, their faces and attitudes spoke volumes. Feeling out of place, I usually retreated to my room after work. When Tom came home, we head to the living room for dinner. The atmosphere around the dinner table grew more and more tense, with longer silences. Tom began to notice the change and started to realize that the sister-in-law was the cause. Around the time our relationship with the in-laws started to deteriorate, the sister-in-law finally made her move. One holiday, Tom and I went shopping in the morning. When we returned, there were unfamiliar shoes at the entrance. We exchanged glances, wondering if something was amiss. Then, the mother-in-law approached us from the living room. "You're finally back. We need to talk." The mother-in-law's tone was different than usual. As we entered the living room, the sister-in-law and her husband were there. "Ah, you're finally here. Kana, what's going on? From today, we'll be living here, so please leave." "What?" Tom and I were taken aback by her sudden declaration. "What is she thinking, moving in today?" "Hold on, it's ridiculous to say that all of a sudden." "It's not sudden. We've discussed this with Mom and Dad for a long time," the sister-in-law replied confidently. "Is it true you discussed this with them?" Tom and I knew the in-laws were swayed by the sister-in-law's words, but we had no idea things had progressed this far. "Kana and her husband said they'll take care of us from now on. I'll do the housework and even care for you when needed. Please rely on us, Mom and Dad. If our daughter is here, we don't need you anymore." A daughter-in-law who doesn't do housework or have children is no match for Kana. "What?" I was deeply hurt by their words. Seeing my shocked face, the sister-in-law smirked. "We'll pay the $473 monthly loan." "Okay." "Huh? $473? It's a great deal to live in such a nice house for that." Tom and I were dumbfounded. The in-laws were already planning to kick us out. After such treatment, we couldn't continue living there. "Is that settled?" "We can't leave immediately." "Could you give us at least a week? We need to find a new place." "Fine." "Ah, you're looking forward to living with Kana and her husband from today." The in-laws looked disappointed the sister-in-law, but she and her husband were extremely happy that we decided to leave. "Calm down, Mom and Dad. The house isn't going anywhere. I'm looking forward to a week from now." The in-laws and the sister-in-law's family were thrilled to drive us out. Did Tom and I seriously consider co-living with such people? We quickly arranged to view rental properties and moved out within a week. The day to leave our home arrived. "Please take care of everything from now on. Don't ever get involved with us or come to this house again." Their words were harsh. We had supported the in-laws so much, and they switched allegiance so easily. Now we can finally live with Mom and Dad in this house. Living comfortably in this house with Kana is like a dream. We got rid of the nuisance after all. Our in-laws and sister-in-law kept insulting us until the last minute we were leaving. Little did they know they would face repercussions after this. Well, it's none of our business anymore. As I gathered our belongings and approached the entrance, I shared an important piece of information. "Oh, by the way, it seems there's a misunderstanding about the monthly mortgage payments. It's $1,825 every month, okay? Make sure you understand that." "What? Isn't the loan just $473 a month?" At my words, their faces turned pale all at once. "Hold on a second. Isn't the loan just $473 a month? You misunderstood, didn't you? This house is under our father's name, so the loan is contractually agreed to be paid off through a debit from Dad's account. Emily and I were planning to live in this house for the rest of our lives, so we told him he wouldn't have to pay. We were bearing all the costs. So I was transferring $473, and Emily was transferring $1,352 to our father's account every month. I guess Father only remembered how much Emily puts in his account each month. Moreover, we split the living expenses equally. Our parents probably never thoroughly checked the cost and assumed it wasn't a significant amount." "What? No way. We can't pay $1,825 a month. We can't even cover the living expenses on top of that. How can Emily afford to contribute so much? I don't know how you perceive me, but I'm department head at a major corporation. I earn quite a lot." "What? Emily earns much more than I do." As the in-laws looked shocked, Tom continued, "It's simple. In-laws were unaware of this. Well, we've decided to cut ties with you, so it's up to you to support our parents from now on. No way. Emily, Tom, wait. We were wrong. Let's live peacefully together like before, okay? What? Mom and Dad, are you planning to abandon us? You guys can repay the loan, can't you? If that's the case, shouldn't you live with those who can? That's not fair. Dad told me the loan was only about $473. That's why we came here. We've already canceled our previous house. That's not my problem. Isn't this mess because you wanted to move in with us in the first place, right? Your husband earns very little, doesn't he? But you always said family is more important than money and pampered me. When our livelihood is at stake, all of that doesn't matter. The quarrel between the in-laws and the sister-in-law was unbearable to watch. Well, we're leaving. Wait, regardless of what you say, we will never associate with you again. With that, Tom and I left the house and moved into our rented room. Despite the numerous messages from the in-laws, we ignored them all. According to our neighbors, the in-laws and the sister-in-law's family had no choice but to live together. However, they couldn't pay the loan and eventually had to let go of the house. When they sold the house, a considerable debt remained. Even after using the father-in-law's early retirement benefits for repayment, they still fell short. Sadly, they now live in a cheap, small apartment, all working full-time and part-time jobs to repay their debt. Apparently, the sister-in-law's husband didn't want the burden to fall on him, so he ran away. If only the in-laws had continued living peacefully with us, they wouldn't have faced these hardships. But again, it's none of our concern now. On the other hand, Tom and I found our rented apartment much cozier than anticipated. We plan to stay here for a while and save money, living happily as our savings grow at an incredible rate. We believe it's essential to save as much as we can for the future while still enjoying our lives with the occasional luxury. We aim for a happy life together in the years to come. She proved to be such a nuisance, always obstructing my path. Right up until the bitter end, my husband spat out those words. It made me question if he was truly human at all. He was insufferable, not only as a parent, but as a person. I'm sorry. I will avenge you, I declared, standing before the funeral attendees, reading the letter left by my daughter. As I read, my husband's face turned ashen. What the hell do you think you're doing? My father-in-law's angry voice echoed. The revenge was about to commence. My name is Elma, a 40-year-old housewife. I've been married to Carl for 15 years. We met in high school, becoming classmates in our sophomore year. We started talking after becoming desk mates and grew closer while working together on a school festival project. After the festival ended, he confessed, and we started dating. We continued dating through college. Carl moved out on his own, so I often visited his apartment. After graduation, we both started working and got busy, but we still made time for dates and meals out. Once we both started earning more, we enjoyed traveling during our holidays. I cherished those trips we took while dating. 3 years into our working lives, we decided to get married. We had saved enough for a wedding and had settled into our jobs, so it felt like the right time. Since we had dated since high school, we already knew each other's families, which made meeting the parents and house visits go smoothly. Many people attended our wedding, including our high school classmates, celebrating our union. Afterward, we started our married life, which was full of joy. Even though we'd been together for over 8 years since high school, we felt fresh and excited in our married life. It felt real when my last name changed to his. We were having a smooth marriage. 3 years later, our daughter Rosa was born. Wow, she looks like an angel, so cute, Carl exclaimed, holding our newborn daughter. I'll work my butt off to protect our family, he declared. Thank you, be our rock, I replied. You can count on me, he assured confidently. With a new member to protect, my husband seemed larger than life and very reliable. After giving birth, I worked part-time in his company. The first reason was to have more time with our child. Raising her was incredibly joyful. Every little milestone, like crawling or walking, was a moment of excitement, and I took countless photos and videos, like any proud parent. When I told Carl, he'd say, "I wish I could have seen that," with a tinge of regret. We spent blissful days playing with our daughter on his days off. As Rosa grew, she became conversational. We loved taking her to different places and letting her have various experiences. We were excited about thinking of her future dreams and the path she would take. But everything changed when Rosa was in the 3rd grade. I was working part-time when suddenly I got a call from the hospital. Rosa had collapsed during class. In a state of panic, I hurried to the hospital. My husband left work early to join me, and together we listened to the doctor's solemn words. That's when the shocking truth hit us like a tidal wave. Our daughter had a rare disease. Depending on the treatment, she probably had about a year to live, the doctor explained. My mind went blank. My daughter was burdened with an incurable illness. All that awaited us was the use of medication to ease the symptoms, with no guarantee of halting the relentless progression of the disease. We were devastated, grappling with the harsh reality of why such a small child had to endure this cruel fate. As time passed, her condition worsened. 6 months later, walking became a challenge, and she could no longer attend school. Our days were consumed by hospital visits and lying in bed at home. Gradually, she became bedridden. I had to quit my part-time job to care for her full-time. It was a necessary sacrifice, as anything could happen while I was away. Supporting her became our top priority. Around this time, my husband's demeanor underwent a drastic change. He easily fell into bad moods, and the atmosphere at home grew tense. When I welcomed him home with dinner, he'd respond with irritation, questioning my choice of fish. His complaints about every little thing persisted. The house felt peaceful and calm when it was just my daughter and me, but anxiety crept in whenever he was around. His irritability escalated, and he started coming home late, citing overtime work. Strangely, I felt relief when he stayed out late. The mental exhaustion lifted. Yet, I couldn't shake the loneliness. He had stopped caring about our daughter's well-being. When I implored him to talk to her more, he dismissed it, claiming fatigue and declaring that taking care of her during the day was enough. 2 years had passed since her diagnosis, and she continued to fight against her illness with unwavering spirit. Despite her strength, my husband refused to acknowledge her efforts. Instead, his overtime increased, and he started staying out overnight without a message to me. The days without him felt strangely comfortable, even when he was home. Our interactions were minimal, and he seemed to sense the tension, avoiding unnecessary conversations. Strangely, my daughter, in the midst of her struggle, noticed the growing distance between us. "Did you and Dad fall out?" she asked one day. "You hardly ever talk when you're together, right?" "Most of the time." I could hear voices, and it sounded like they were arguing. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you, but it's okay. We're not on bad terms, really. Yes, true, Dad's just really busy with work, so when he's home, he's resting. That's why I don't talk to him much so he can get some rest." I reassured our daughter. "Oh, I see," she responded, a little relieved but still seeming sad that her dad wasn't talking to her much. "Did Dad start to dislike me after I got sick?" she asked with a hint of worry. "That's not true at all. A parent can't hate their child. Like I said, he's just busy with work. Don't worry, he doesn't hate you, okay?" I comforted her. After putting our daughter to bed and leaving her room, I sighed. Why am I causing her to worry like this? She's in a life-or-death situation, and I'm troubling her with this. Gathering my courage, I spoke to my husband when he came home. "Hey, Rosa is feeling lonely. She's wondering if you started to dislike her after she got sick," I admitted. My husband, who had been listening reluctantly, seemed surprised that our daughter would say such a thing and finally looked at me. "Yes, she did. So please, even if it's just a little, talk to her. She's lived past the life expectancy she was given, so it wouldn't be strange if we lost her anytime. Let's make sure neither of you has any regrets, okay?" I pleaded. "I got it," he said begrudgingly and in a low voice. The next day, being Sunday, I deliberately created time for just my husband and daughter to be together. I went out to the store for a couple of hours. When I returned home, I asked him, "Did you get to talk to Rosa?" He replied, "Yeah, we talked about various things." I was glad if it was for our daughter's sake, but then my husband started to get ready to go out. "Are you going somewhere?" I inquired. "Yeah, I'm going out to eat with a friend." "Why don't we all have dinner together as a family?" I suggested. "Ah, I've been invited, so I can't say no. I've done my part by talking to Rosa. It's time for you to let me go." Saying that, he left the house, leaving me puzzled. What does he mean by "let me go"? I felt like nothing had been resolved. Maybe my husband was just going through the motions out of obligation. At that moment, I decided to stop expecting anything from him. It was enough if I cherished our daughter. That's what I thought. I focused more on making conversation with her. Then, one day, my husband came home in a bad mood. "Hey, get dinner ready quickly," he demanded. I had stopped trying to say anything to my husband, so I prepared dinner, put it in front of him, and was about to go to our daughter's room when he stopped me. "Hey, pack a week's worth of clothes in the duffel bag. I've got a business trip. Make sure you pack all the essentials, like the razor too." After saying that, he went to take a bath without even clearing his dishes. Why do I have to do this? But surely if the bag wasn't packed by the time he got out of the bath, he would get pretty mad. And if he raised his voice, it would worry our daughter. If she woke up, I sighed and went into his room to pack the clothes into the duffel bag. Well, it's a relief. He'll be gone on a business trip for a week. With him gone, I can relax. I packed the bag and left it in his room. The next morning, my husband left without thanking me or saying anything. That annoyed me, but I decided to let myself do as I pleased. First, I called my parents to come and see our daughter. If my husband is away for a week, my folks can stay over without any worry. They seemed torn, happy to see their granddaughter, but saddened to see her bedridden. They were all smiles in front of her. But once she fell asleep, their faces were filled with pain and loneliness. "It really is unfair of God," they said. "Why couldn't it be an old-timer like me instead of a good kid like Rosa?" My parents stayed until the very last minute before my husband was due back. As time went on, Rosa's condition worsened, and she had to be hospitalized. I was gripped with fear that the inevitable might be near. I visited her in the hospital every day, but my husband never came. Instead, when he returned home early, he sent angry messages on WhatsApp, upset about dinner not being ready. At this point, beyond sighing, I thought it might be better without a husband who couldn't cherish his own daughter. However, his work, painful as it was to admit, allowed me these moments with her. Not only my parents but also my in-laws came to visit her often at the hospital. Rosa always seemed happy when someone came to see her. We even celebrated her 12th birthday in the hospital room, where the nurses prepared a cake, and we all celebrated together. But about a month after her birthday, Rosa's condition worsened, and she passed away. I was devastated, breaking down in tears. The reality shattered my emotions. My parents tried to comfort me, but they ended up crying with me. Still, we had to see Rosa off properly. Together with my parents, I arranged and prepared for the funeral. There were things I had to do, all for Rosa. I managed to hold back my tears and proceed with the funeral arrangements. We arrived at the funeral parlor early before the other mourners. My husband, irritable about having to get up early after coming back from his business trip the day before, was infuriating. He hadn't been reachable when Rosa passed away, and he had the gall to say, "I was on a business trip. Even if you had contacted me, I could have made it back." He tried to light a cigarette in frustration. "Go to the smoking area, please," I said sharply. Tutting, he looked irritated. After I called him out, standing by the coffin on his way to smoke, he said something awful to our sleeping daughter. "You were such a pain, always in my way, right to the end." My husband spat out these cruel words as if they were nothing. Is he really human? He was the worst, not just as a parent, but as a person. I was rendered speechless by the horrible things he said. I couldn't move from the spot until my husband walked towards the smoking area. When I came to, I went straight to the coffin. "I'm sorry. I will take revenge in your place, I told my daughter, steeling myself with determination. I could never forgive him. Then the funeral began. Unbelievably, my husband, who had just said such terrible things, pretended to cry in front of the relatives, saying Rosa's name as tears streamed down his face. I knew it was an act because I saw him apply eye drops before walking up to the coffin. The relatives, not knowing any better, misunderstood and started crying too. Unforgivable. I would reveal his true nature no matter what. As the funeral was drawing to a close, it was time to read the letter left by my daughter. What? There's a letter. My husband was clearly surprised, not having known about it. Yes, there is. I have to properly convey the words she left behind to everyone. I stood before the funeral attendees and began to read my daughter's letter aloud at the microphone. The letter was mostly words of gratitude to me for the care I had given her. With each word I read, tears came and I choked up. The relatives also started to cry along. But as I got to the part about my husband, I took a deep breath. To Dad, I read, as the tears naturally stopped. Against Mom, who was always by my side, you seemed to avoid coming home as if you were avoiding us. Even when you came home, all I could hear was your voice yelling at her in my room. Dad used to make time to play with me when I was little, taking me on drives to all sorts of places. But after I got sick and became bedridden, Dad seemed like a completely different person. Mom always pretended to be strong in front of me, but I could tell she was really struggling with how Dad was behaving. It hurt me, thinking maybe it was my fault things turned out this way. But it seems that wasn't the case. Remember the day Mom went shopping, and it was just Dad and me at home. You came to my room and talked to me. Then, maybe because Mom asked you to, I was so happy. It felt like the old Dad had come back. But then, thinking I was asleep, you took the phone call. You were talking to a woman. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I know everything. You were planning a week-long trip. Did you enjoy the Disney trip you went on behind our backs? And you told that woman on the phone that you loved her. As I read my daughter's letter aloud, the room buzzed with tension. My husband stood there, pale as a ghost. What the hell are you doing? My father-in-law's angry voice boomed. The revenge had begun. My husband just stood there, speechless, stuttering. Ah! My father-in-law grabbed him by the collar and yelled, "You fool!" before striking him across the face. My husband, staggering, denied the affair, saying, "It's not what it looks like. There must be some mistake." What's the mistake? Rosa would never lie, but I haven't had an affair. My husband stuck to his denials, holding the microphone. I've already caught you. Stop with the futile resistance. Yes, I had seen my daughter's letter beforehand and hired a private investigator. I had gathered plenty of evidence of my husband's affair. I showed the photo on my smartphone to everyone at the funeral. All the relatives attending glared at my husband. How could you go on an affair trip when your own child's life was hanging by a thread? You're finished as a human being. I didn't raise you to be such a terrible adult. Mom, Dad, you're no son of ours anymore. We disown you. My husband just collapsed on the spot, trying to escape the pain. I didn't want to face the reality that my daughter had become like that. What are you even saying? That's no excuse for having an affair. And if that were true, you would have spent more time with Rosa. Don't lie now when we've come so far. And I heard from your parents. You were asking them for money for Rosa's medical expenses because it was so costly. I never heard a word about it. That means you were using the money your parents sent for your own pleasure, right? You exploited your daughter's illness to collect money and have an affair, didn't you? Don't give me that. How dare you do such low things and then talk about suffering? Rosa was the one suffering the most, fighting desperately to survive her illness. To have a father like you, Rosa was the one to be pitied. You're not wanted at this funeral. Get out of here right now. I shouted at my husband with all my might. He fell on his butt, let out a small yelp, and then hurriedly ran away from the place. After that, I reset and continued with my daughter's funeral. When it was over, my in-laws apologized deeply and offered to help with the divorce and alimony in any way they could. I proceeded with the divorce and demanded alimony through a lawyer introduced by my father-in-law. But that wasn't enough for me. I took the house my husband had bought and also told everyone at his workplace about what he had done. My ex-husband, who had made it to the position of manager, quickly lost all credibility at the company. He was demoted and sent to work in a remote location. He asked his affair partner to come with him, but she promptly dumped him, saying she had no interest in a man without money. In the end, to his affair partner, my ex-husband was just a rich plaything. My ex-husband was abandoned by his parents and relatives, left to work alone in a distant place, living a lonely life in his house. It's all what he deserves, and honestly, I'd like to beat him up to my heart's content if I could. Meanwhile, I sold the house I got from my ex-husband and moved back to my parents' house. With the alimony from my ex-husband and his affair partner, I had a considerable amount of money. I didn't feel like working for a while after my daughter passed away, but gradually, I started to think more positively and began working part-time at a cafe near my parents' house. Mom's homemade cake. Rosa loved it so much. I remember my daughter saying that. Now, I bake sweets every day while working at the cafe and honing my pastry skills. I hope to one day serve my own creations on the menu, and just like how my daughter was happy eating my cake, I want to see someone else smiling while eating my cake. For my daughter's sake, I have to live my life to the fullest. With that thought, I put my all into working towards my dream. Today, thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment. What's this? Seriously, it's no wonder I couldn't help but exclaim. There in front of me were the words of a termination notice. I had been told not to contact during business trips, but this was something I couldn't ignore. I hurriedly called Jack. No answer. I called over and over. Simultaneously, I sent messages, but there was no response. It was past noon. Maybe he couldn't answer due to work, but I had to get in touch somehow. After persistently calling, he finally picked up. Hello, Jack. Don't you know not to contact me during work hours? Jack immediately started yelling. I'm sorry, but it's urgent. I've received a certified letter from the company. I told you not to contact me while I'm on a business trip. Jack was not willing to listen. What if your actions ruin the contract? It seemed impossible to get him to listen. All right. I decided to keep silent about the termination notice, as a result of not contacting at all. My name is Sarah Johnson, 30 years old. I work from home as an industrial designer. Simply put, as an industrial designer, I design the shapes of products. I used to be an employee of a major company working from home, but now I've become independent and freelance. Thankfully, my work is going well, and I'm earning a decent income. At 26, I married Jack, whom I met through a friend's introduction. Even after getting married, I continued to work for the company. But when I became pregnant with our 2-year-old son, Kyle, I switched to working from home. Since then, I've been working from home while Jack worked at the office. After maternity and parental leave, I returned to work from home. Although my salary was lower than when I was going to the office, it's easier on my mind and body than commuting and leaving the child in daycare. Our company created a great system. However, Jack seemed unsatisfied with my reduced salary. Shouldn't you go back to work, even if it means putting Kyle in daycare? We've got a mortgage to pay, and with the economy being down, the company's performance isn't looking up either. Well, that's true. But if we put Kyle in daycare, we have to pay for that too. I think it would end up costing about the same. When we got married, Jack and I took out a joint mortgage to buy our new home. Renting is like throwing money away. It's better to stretch a bit and buy a place. It'll be easier in the long run. Jack, who works at a securities company and is fussy about finance and assets, would argue. Convinced by his point, I agreed, and we bought the apartment, located near a convenient station for commuting. It was a bit pricey, but we were told it would appreciate in value. Life was peaceful until I started working from home. But then Jack began to show his discontent. It seemed it wasn't so much about the money, but rather he felt it was unfair that I was the only one staying at home. If the costs are going to be the same, you might as well go back to work. Staying home all the time leads to a lack of exercise and isolation from society. Sure, there's some truth to that, but with my first childbirth and now child care, it's easier on my body to stay home. Getting help is difficult, as both Jack and I are from out of town, and our families live far away. We can't easily rely on either side for assistance. When I brought up this topic, I could sense Jack's real feelings from his muttered response. It's unfair that only Sarah gets to stay home. I wish I could too, but there's a difference in our jobs. I'm a designer and Jack is in sales. I can finish designs on my computer and just send the data, but Jack's work can't be done from home. That's true, but still, it feels unfair that only Sarah gets to enjoy this nice house, he complained. Hearing these words surprised me. What do you mean enjoy alone? This is our home. Yours, mine, and Kyle's. First of all, we're both paying the mortgage. The rights should be split equally. Jack's childish remarks made me worry if he was really okay. Even as a father, Kyle was growing up well, and I was managing both child care and work from home. I also took the bold step of becoming independent as my work was well received, and I started getting offers from business contacts. However, around that time, Jack began coming home late and working more on weekends. It's a tough economy. I've got to work harder, or my sales allowance will keep shrinking, he'd say with a sarcastic sigh. Lucky are those who can work comfortably at home. No need to endure crowded trains to commute, huh? Must be nice, he'd say, implying I was lounging at home while he worked hard. But that's not the case. I'm taking care of the child and household chores while working from home. I'd often have to go out for work and other necessities. I'm certainly not just lounging around at home. Fed up, I once confronted him. Look, I'm not just playing around. Why can't you understand that? I'm paying my share of the mortgage too. Oh, is that so? Jack interrupted, his face turning red with anger. I must be such a failure, huh? Can't even get a mortgage on my own with my meager salary. I never said anything like that. Unlike the talented designer that you are, I have to desperately plead with unpleasant clients every day just to get paid. It always felt like that. No matter what I said, Jack would only take things negatively. I got so tired and eventually stopped talking to him altogether. It seemed pointless to say anything, and gradually, I started to wonder if there was any point in living together. But Jack was Kyle's father. The thought of taking away his father seemed selfish, and that held me back. Maybe because I stopped talking, Jack started behaving even more selfishly and eventually almost stopped contributing financially. It was supposed to be a joint mortgage, but now it looks like I'm paying it all by myself. It's tough, but with my current income as a designer, I can manage the mortgage and living expenses on my own. Jack probably knows this, and that's why he's behaving like that. I think if we were at risk of losing the house because we couldn't pay the mortgage, he'd contribute something. Jack is that kind of calculative person. And around that time, I started to have a suspicion. Maybe Jack had another woman and was spending his money on her. If that's the case, I have no choice but to take a drastic step. Of course, I'd make sure he pays what he owes. I wanted to find proof, but I didn't know how. The most reliable way would be to hire a detective agency, but that's expensive. If I knew the dates, times, or places to look, it would be easier. But with just a vague suspicion, I had no idea how much it would cost. Right now, I'm managing, but if Jack and I were to separate, there'd be future uncertainties. I prefer to save as much money as possible. Then one day, while I was feeling uneasy, a certified mail from the company arrived. Jack was on a business trip and had been gone for 2 nights and 3 days. Why would they send something like this on a day he's away? I was even more perplexed but curious. So I decided to open it, telling myself that if it was urgent, I needed to contact him immediately. I opened the envelope. What the heck is this? I couldn't help but explain. It was a termination notice. I was told not to contact Jack during business trips, but I couldn't just ignore this. I tried calling him, no answer. I called again and again. I sent messages too, but got no response. It was past noon. Maybe he couldn't answer because of work, but I had to get through to him. When I kept calling persistently, he finally answered. "Hello, Jack. I told you not to contact me when I'm working." Jack yelled as soon as he answered. "I'm sorry, but it's urgent. You see, there's this certified mail from the company. Don't contact me when I'm on a business trip." Jack wouldn't listen at all. "What if you ruin a contract because of this?" As he said that, I heard someone's voice in the background. Could it be? I quickly pressed the record button. "Listen, I'll say it again. Don't contact me. Got it?" He wouldn't listen, no matter how important it was. Okay. I decided to keep quiet about the termination notice. I ended the call. Jack was the one who didn't listen, even though it was important, and I realized that even if Jack lost his job, it wouldn't affect me much. I'm a designer with a technical skill set steadily building my career. When I started working from home, I was an employee. As an employee, I had to report daily to the company how many hours I worked and such. I needed to inform them even when I took a day off. But now, I'm independent, handling work not just from my former company, but also from other clients. I'm completely freelance. Since becoming freelance, I've been taking on a lot more work and earning several times more than when I was an employee. I could leave Jack and be just fine, but still, it would be a shame to end it like this. That call, I think the voice was a woman's. Listening carefully to the recording, I could make out what was being said. The woman didn't realize I was on the phone and was asking Jack for something. I couldn't hear exactly what it was, but she was asking for something for her birthday. Her birthday must be coming up soon. This could be a clue to finding out who Jack's with. If I can narrow down the hints a bit more, I'll consider hiring a detective. For now, I just have to be patient. The next night, Jack returned from his business trip. "You know I told you not to contact me during work, right? Because of you, I almost lost a contract." "I'm sorry." I wondered who he was in the middle of making a contract with. Perhaps it was a birthday purchase agreement. I smiled to myself, not showing it on my face. "If you understand that it's fine. I'm going to take a bath and go to bed, okay?" I quietly watched as Jack prepared for his bath in bed. Once he was sound asleep, I stealthily checked his smartphone. As expected, it was locked. I gently took the phone, used Jack's sleeping finger to unlock it, and began to search. There they were, photos of Jack cozied up with the same woman. Not just pictures, but videos too. Some of them incriminating messages, dates, places, how they spent their time together. Everything was there. He probably thought I'd never find out about his affair. How he underestimated me. I copied the data from his phone to my computer, carefully putting the phone back. I started to plan my next move. I'll make sure he experiences hell first. To uncover the identity of the woman, I couldn't tell who she was just from the photos and chats. I reviewed the data and decided to start from there. The next day, Jack left the house as if nothing had happened. He said he was going to work, but I hoped he could still do his job as usual. After sending him off, I revisited the certified mail. It lacked detailed explanations. I didn't know what he did, but it seemed his termination was final. It was a bit troubling. If Jack lost his job, it'd be harder to make him pay alimony and child support. You can't shake down a turnip. He probably spent what he didn't bring home on that woman. I wanted to recoup at least some of it. Of course, I planned to make her pay damages too. I scrutinized the data transferred to my computer. It was unpleasant to see their intimate exchanges, but I was sure to find some clue. Social media platforms typically require a phone number for user registration. When I checked, there it was, a contact listed as Kate, trading in Jack's phone. Apparently, his mistress. Whether Kate was her real name, I wasn't sure. I picked out the necessary information and compiled the data. Now, what to do with this data? Should I hire a detective or go straight to a lawyer? Thinking it over, I had a great idea, something I saw in a melodramatic TV show. I decided to play it out myself. Hey, I think I need to go back to my parents' place for a bit. Why? It's nothing serious, but my mom's caught a bad cold, and my dad can't manage everything alone. Jack glanced at me, pretending to think it over. Probably thought it looked better not to agree too quickly. How many days are you planning to be there? At least 2 or 3 days, I replied, looking up at him as if seeking approval. Jack looked down at me, seemingly pleased with my meek behavior, and his face softened into a smile. That's being a good daughter. Go ahead. Thank you. My demeanor seemed to satisfy him. So when are you leaving? I wanted to leave today, but it's too late now, so I'll leave first thing tomorrow morning, right after you go to work. Okay, got it. Take care. Jack was unnaturally kind, probably playing into my plan. The next morning, as usual, he left the house. Despite being told he's fired, I wondered where he was going, but I needed him out to prepare, so please go ahead. I sent him off with a regretful look and got to work. I left Kyle with a trustworthy babysitter, someone who had taken care of him several times before for work and errands. I could rely on them without worry. Then I messaged Jack. I'm on the train now. Really sorry for the trouble. Planning to be back in 3 days. He replied quickly. Understood. Take care. That night, as expected, Jack brought Kate home. I hired professionals to gather all the evidence of their rendezvous. I knew the data already on Jack's smartphone would be enough for a favorable divorce, but I wanted to personally punish them both. On the first day of the trap, Jack and Kate returned home in the afternoon and didn't leave until the next evening. Then came the main event. I was a bit anxious waiting, not knowing what time they'd return, but I was sure they would. Late that night, just before the date changed, they came back. They seemed tipsy, giggling, and stumbling into the bedroom, falling on the bed tangled together. Now, welcome home. As I finished speaking, I flung open the closet door with a loud bang. Kate screamed in shock and tumbled out of the bed. In the process, she hit her head against the cabinet beside the bed. Serves her right. What? Jack hadn't fallen off the bed, but he was frozen in a bizarre position on it. He was lying on his back, arms thrust forward from his chest. It seemed he was so startled by my appearance that he accidentally pushed Kate away. That's why she flew off the bed and hit her head. Welcome home, dear. Jack lay there in his strange pose, eyes wide open, staring at me. He looked utterly ridiculous. Oh, we have a guest, I remarked as I slowly emerged from the closet and stood beside the bed, looking down at Jack with a full smile. I ignored the woman who had lost consciousness. You, who is this lady? It's quite rude to sleep in someone else's house like this. Jack was at a loss for words. Well, that's okay. Let's have a little chat, I said, pulling out my phone to make a call. Who are you calling? Oh, just someone, I replied, humming a tune as I ended the call and coldly looked down at Kate. What should we do with her? What do you mean? What should we, wake her up or let her sleep? Jack glanced back and forth between me and Kate, falling silent in apparent confusion. All right then, we don't want anything to happen to her, so let's wake her up. Hey you, I said, shaking Kate gently. Kate groaned and slowly opened her eyes. Hey you, I repeated. Kate looked dazed for a moment before realizing her situation and freezing in shock. We're going to have a talk now, so come over here, please. Kate remained frozen and didn't respond. Come here, please. Yes, she replied reflexively after I spoke a bit more sternly. I called both of them to the dining room and had them sit side by side at the table. I really don't want to have you sitting here, but well, you've already made yourself comfortable, haven't you? The table will do, I said, making it clear there would be no hospitality like tea. Now, I want you to answer some questions. If you're honest, I might consider certain things, like maybe reducing the damages. You owe the word damages turned their faces pale. So, when did it start? What? When did the two of you start this relationship? Be honest, or the damn damages will double. Jack's eyes darted around nervously, and Kate just kept blinking rapidly. Since when? Today. Today was the first time, right? Yes. A lot really. Yes, we met today for the first time. And since you weren't here, we just got carried away. Yes, they both said, seemingly agreeing on the story. That's a lie. Ding dong. The people I had called arrived. I asked Jack and Kate to wait while I let my guests in the dining room. Two professionals, a man and a woman in suits, entered. Please, the woman took out an envelope, and the man opened his laptop. Here, take a look. The screen showed yesterday's footage of Jack and Kate entering the room, followed by the interior video. Hey, isn't this illegal filming? That's right, it's a crime, they protested while Jack and Kate were making a fuss. The detective agency explained everything properly. Indeed, secretly filming someone is voyeurism, but if it's for the purpose of catching evidence of infidelity, it's allowed. Moreover, this was a job undertaken by professionals, meaning the detectives from the agency following a request. Therefore, it doesn't constitute a criminal act. Got it. So this isn't a crime. Both Jack and Kate sat silently, heads bowed. Once again, when did it start? They didn't answer. Since when? You said today was the first time, but that's a lie, right? Well, yesterday, Jack began, raising his head to meet my eyes. I'm sorry. What I said earlier, it actually started yesterday. We drank too much, and one thing led to another. Yes, I'm sorry, they both apologized. So, you admit to the affair? Yes, we're sorry, but it was just this once. Sorry, it's true. It seemed they were trying to settle the matter with this version of the story. I told you before, if you lie, the damages will double. It's not a lie. Believe us, it's true. I brought over my laptop and placed it in front of them. If yesterday was the first time, then who are these people? I asked, showing them the photos and videos copied from Jack's smartphone, along with their social media interactions. Another lie. You're taking stuff from someone's smartphone. That's a crime. Sorry to disappoint you, but this also isn't a crime. You heard the reason just now, right? Jack and Kate had nothing more to say and just sat in silence. Eventually, they resigned themselves to telling the whole story. Their affair had started 2 years ago, around the time Kyle was born. Jack said he felt neglected and lonely after Kyle's birth and listed various reasons for his actions. That's when he met Kate, and their relationship continued until now. He described it as a momentary lapse of judgment and expressed regret. Kate looked at Jack with disbelief. Understandably so. She had been showered with sweet words all this time, only to be now referred to as a mistake. Kate, with tears in her eyes, admitted the time they started their relationship, but remained silent about the rest. It seemed futile to ask anything more. I'll arrange another day to talk with both your parents and Kate's parents. I thanked the detectives, sent them away, and also showed Kate out. Could you? You leave too. Maybe stay at a hotel or something. You might catch up with Kate if you're quick. I wouldn't do such a thing. Whatever, just leave. I made sure to send Jack out as well. Later, I arranged a meeting with both our parents and Jack's. My in-laws were mortified, just kept apologizing. My parents sat in silent anger. I showed them all the evidence, including the conversation from the day I caught. So, I want a divorce. I'll take custody of Kyle and demand child support and damages. Jack protested the amount I demanded, but I refused to budge. You've been deceiving me for 2 years and brought another woman into this house. Plus, you stopped contributing to the household expenses. My in-laws were shocked to hear this for the first time. My father-in-law even tried to hit Jack, but I stopped him. I don't want to see that. If you're going to do it, please do it where I can't see. My in-laws promised to cover the damages and child support. Regarding the apartment, I decided to take payment for my share of the mortgage up until now and then leave the rest to Jack. I don't want to live in a tainted house. Just pay me my share and then do whatever you want with it. It would probably end up being sold, but selling it now would only result in a loss. Jack had no capacity to keep up with the mortgage payments. It was unavoidable. I found out why Jack was fired from his company. He had caused significant losses to a client, not just once but multiple times. I thought it would definitely be profitable, but every single transaction I thought was surefire turned out badly. Jack explained he felt overshadowed by my success after I became independent and started earning more. In an attempt to outdo me, Jack did something he shouldn't have, making unauthorized stock trades for his clients, causing them losses. Trying to fill the gap he created, he kept repeating the same mistakes, and things became unmanageable. Yet he believed he would surely recover the losses someday, which is why he couldn't stop. Unaware that his company had caught on, he used his time with Kate to distract himself. That day, he had lied to the company, saying I was sick and he needed to care for me. Who would think they'd send a termination notice to a house with a sick person? Who's really being unreasonable here? It's hard to believe such words are coming from someone who lied to take time off work and go on a trip with another woman. Under these circumstances, the reason for his affair after Kyle was born. You stopped paying attention to me. That's to be expected when there's a baby. Even taking care of oneself becomes secondary, let alone catering to a grown man's needs like a child. Tired and unamused by my constant attention to Kyle, he met Kate at a bar and was drawn to her. Kate was young and pretty, and she listened to everything I said with interest. He regained the confidence he had lost. They started a deeper relationship after celebrating her 20th birthday. Kate was 19 when they first met. I bought Kate anything she wanted. Her asking for things was cute. Sarah, you earn enough to buy whatever you want, so you never ask me for anything. To fulfill Kate's wishes, he stopped contributing financially to our home. The apartment has always been your place. I just slept there, so I thought it was fair for you to pay for it. I remembered him saying that. Sarah, if you became a company employee again, you'd only be home for the same amount of time. Then it would be equal. So that's why he wanted me to stop working from home and commute instead. It's truly exasperating, the excuses Jack kept coming up with. None of them made any sense, no matter how I looked at it, but he blamed it all on me. If only Sarah had continued working like before and supported me, none of this would have happened, he said. Hearing these words, even my father-in-law broke down in tears. It was just pitiful, but that's no longer my concern. Because they paid the amount I wanted doesn't mean my wounds are healed or that I can forgive them. But they agreed to pay the damages and child support for Kyle that I demanded, so I have to accept it as good enough. I also demanded separate damages from Kate. Thankfully, her parents were responsible and paid everything on her behalf. I had said that lies would cost double, but I decided against it. I have my principles. I settled the matter within those bounds. I'm sorry, Kate apologized, appearing before me with her parents, looking completely different from the drunken Kate I had seen before. She honestly talked about her past. Kate, originally from a rural area, was astonished by the stark difference when she came to the city. Her college classmates all seemed fashionable, flashy, and dazzling. Trying to keep up, she started working at a bar. That's where I met Jack. He said he wasn't getting along with his wife, that they were about to divorce. It was just taking time because of the child. I believed him. Kate seemed to have genuinely loved Jack. Jack was handsome and well-paid. He bought me anything I asked for. I was happy that he listened to everything I said. That day, Jack had brought Kate to the apartment, saying they would soon live there together once I was gone. It seems he wanted to save on hotel costs, but Kate believed him. I thought we would soon live together here, and it made me happy. But then Jack referred to me as just a momentary lapse, Kate said with tears in her eyes. That's when I realized I was just being played. Her demeanor didn't seem deceitful, but I won't say I was deceived. I knew he was married and still got involved. It's my fault. I'm sorry. Kate and her parents apologized together. The truth is unclear. Perhaps Jack did have genuine feelings for Kate at some point. However, in the end, he chose to prioritize his interests. It seems that his understanding of the situation was ultimately shallow. He's someone who selfishly acts on whims, just like a child relying on his wife, then feeling neglected and unappreciated. Kate would be better off forgetting about such a man. Kate has since quit college and returned to the countryside with her parents to start over. I'll work and pay back what my parents covered as soon as possible. Although I once despised her, I now hope she finds a straight path in life and happiness. Afterward, Jack was fired from his company and sued for the losses he couldn't cover. That was expected. He lied to the company to take time off and was caught embezzling for his escapades. It wasn't just causing losses to clients. He used that money for personal enjoyment, which led to his judgment. Though he received a suspended sentence, his future is uncertain. I feel sorry for my in-laws, who were good people, but it was a deserved outcome. I've returned to my parents' home, where they help me with Kyle while I continue working. Despite the personal turmoil, my career is going well. Kyle's growth is now my sole comfort. For now, I think I don't need a man in my life, but like Kate, who's gone back to start anew, I too hope to meet someone truly trustworthy someday. I believe there's still someone good out there for me. Life is still long. It's too long to stumble over a single failure and give up. I want to show Kyle a forward-looking, resilient spirit, never to become someone who loses everything due to childish dependency like his father. For that reason, I will keep looking ahead, hold my head high, and keep walking. I will never give up on any happiness. My request for approval was promptly denied. It would be fine if it's the storage shed. I exclaimed, "Don't make a fool of me. Our house is fairly spacious. If the rooms were tidied up, there would be no problem having my father live with us. Truly, my husband's feelings for me and my family are less than that of a pet. Well then, I will sincerely clean up the storage shed and renovate it. Even the storage shed can be used just like a regular room if it's clean. There's meaning in living with my father now," I determined. Aaron, however, seemed unenthusiastic. "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" I recalled the major renovation we did to ensure my mother-in-law, who visits sometimes, would not have trouble staying over. We even installed a bathroom and toilet, similar to a hotel. I won't rely on such a demon-like man anymore. I made a decision. My name is Vivian Westhill, 52 years old. I help with the company my husband runs. My son, Matthew, has left home, and it's just the two of us living together. My mother-in-law sometimes comes over, but since her house is nearby, she doesn't live with us. Reflecting on how I met my husband nearly 30 years ago, I shared, I hate to say it myself, but I was famous for being good-looking in my hometown. My mother passed away in a traffic accident when I was in middle school, and I was living, helping each other out with my father. Although I was invited out by many men, they were nothing but a hindrance to me. I had a dream of becoming an accountant and was working hard towards that. Despite my popularity, I had a boyfriend of the same age. We would secretly call each other and go out to eat after part-time. I had no intention of dating anyone else. The only people I could let my guard down with were him and my father. He alone appreciated not my appearance, but my seriousness and true strength, among other aspects of my personality and way of thinking. I think we would have become a couple even if I wasn't the same appearance. That was the kind of relationship we had. However, everything changed one day when I returned home to find an unfamiliar family of 3 in my house. Seeing me, my father made a troubled face. I must have been more surprised. A known family introduced themselves. "We are the West Hills." Hearing the name West Hill made it click. A famous rich family in town. I wondered why they were in my house. "Welcome home, Vivian. Mr. West Hill here wants to take you as his wife." Shocked, I protested. "A wife? Marriage? What are you talking about? I had never seen these 3 before. Everyone knows they hold significant influence in town as a wealthy family. Yet the talk of me becoming a bride was unbelievable. Nice to meet you, Vivian. Our Aaron has fallen for you at first sight. He insists on having you as his wife. My would-be father-in-law began speaking. Despite feeling unreal, they didn't disappear, and I was told, "Take your time and talk it over with your father. We'll come back in a week to hear your answer." As they left, I pondered, could our fate be decided in just a week? It didn't seem real. I thought things like this only happened in dramas, and I couldn't believe it was happening to me. Stunned, I watched as the three of them left. "Dad, what's this about a debt? What's your relation with those people?" My father turned to me with a pale face, drained of all blood. "Vivian, I'm sorry. It's true. I was lonely and started drinking and gambling. Before I knew it, the money was gone, and I began borrowing to cover it. Everything I heard since coming home was beyond my capacity to accept. Debts? Why didn't you tell me? I understand you were lonely after Mom suddenly passed away, but having a debt." I couldn't think calmly, naturally. I couldn't even talk about it calmly. This was indeed out of the blue. As far as I could remember, my father never got drunk or angry from losing at gambling. I didn't even know. Mr. Weshill invited me and introduced me to a place with Mr. Weshill's face. We could drink on a tab, and I didn't even know how much the bill was accumulating. The same thing with gambling. He let me buy lottery tickets together, and it just piled up. My father is truly a good person, not knowing how to doubt people. It must have been easy for someone like a scam artist. They must have been scheming from the start to trap my father and have their way with me. Interrupting my thoughts, I questioned, "Hold on a second. What happens to you if I don't marry their son?" In desperation, I pondered if there was any alternative. The looming threat of being pursued by debt collectors or sent to a work camp left me trembling. I clung to a shred of hope, suggesting, "There's no such thing as work camps these days. Can't you just keep working hard to pay it off?" My father's response was disheartening. "Sorry, Vivian, that's impossible. Debt collectors might start contacting my workplace. I might not be able to work anymore." Feeling completely cornered and with no more options to explore, I decided it was enough. There was nothing more to discuss. Despite wanting to vent my feelings of frustration, humiliation, and anger, I couldn't bring myself to do that to my father, who had always taken care of me. I packed my bags and made the immediate decision to go to the West Hill family. There was no use worrying about it. Making this decision wasn't easy, but considering the increasing interest on the debt, I couldn't cling to my home any longer. Marrying Aaron seemed to be the only way to resolve this, and before I could change my mind, I quietly left the house. That night, I arrived at the West Hills home and boldly knocked on the front door. "You're early. Seems like you're blinded by money, just like everyone else," Aaron remarked. Frustration boiled within me, and I wanted to scream that I didn't want any money and wasn't unhappy because I was poor. But his words treated me like a possession, objectifying, and disgusting. Leaving everything behind, I looked forward to being with him from now on, offering a forced greeting as I entered the West Hill household. After that, everything progressed in a whirlwind. Betrayed by my trusted father and breaking up with my beloved boyfriend, it felt like all my emotions had disappeared. The grand wedding with a local famous person, attended by many, blurred in my memory. The only vivid image was my father's haggard look, erasing my resentment towards him. Accepting this as my fate, I decided to change my outlook and enjoy my married life. Little did I know, that was just the beginning of a harrowing experience. Responsibilities piled up, from housework to assisting with the family business, and the pressure to have children took a toll on my mental state. My mother-in-law constantly nagged, and my husband's initial kindness turned into indifference. It was far from the sweet married life I had imagined. "You're completely useless. A woman from the club would be better. Just quietly do your job and chores," my husband declared, treating me like a housemaid. When I became pregnant, even severe morning sickness didn't evoke sympathy. "You're getting fat. Just do your chores and work properly. I don't know why I married you." I gave up on being acknowledged in this home. A wife from a poor family would never be seen as more than a servant. Frustrating as it was, for the sake of my unborn child, I had to endure. Eventually, I gave birth to a boy, But my husband, now with an heir, hardly ever came home. When he did, he reeked of strong perfume and alcohol, evidence of his time spent at clubs. However, my primary focus was on raising my child, so my husband's absence brought a sense of relief. Matthew, my son, grew up healthy and was easy to raise, despite my mother-in-law's persistent annoyance, claiming that Aaron would have been a better choice. I preferred Matthew not turning into a worthless man. My kind-hearted son aspired to become a doctor, and when he left for university, I felt a void in my heart. To fill that emptiness, I decided to dedicate myself more to my work. Around that time, my father-in-law, who had treated me as a human being, passed away. My mother-in-law moved to a condo near the downtown area, enjoying the inheritance from my father-in-law. With the loss of the person who had supported and cared for me like my own father, I began to miss my father. Taking advantage of my husband's indifference, I started talking to my father again, just like old times. Though it was challenging to speak without making my father feel guilty, one day he looked serious. When I asked what was wrong, he said in a resigned tone that he was diagnosed with malignant lymphoma and had only 6 months to live. I was utterly shocked and couldn't believe it. "No way, Dad, that can't be. You're so lively. It's impossible that you only have half a year left, just when we could finally be like a father and daughter again. I can't bear the thought of never seeing you again." Despite my emotional plea, my father smiled kindly and nodded. Wanting to ensure he wouldn't be alone, I decided to ask my husband to let him live with us in our spacious home. I'm not ready to give up, but at least I don't want him to be alone. My father expressed happiness hearing those words and left with a gentle smile. For the first time since getting married, I decided to confront my husband that night. As usual, he came home drunk with the smell of perfume. Seeing me awake and waiting for him, he looked startled. "What's the matter? Don't tell me you want some affection." It seemed he hadn't changed his view on women being objects. I looked straight at him and said, "Aaron, I have something important to talk about. My father has been diagnosed with terminal cancer and has only 6 months to live. I want him to live with us in this house. Of course, I won't let it be a bother to you. We can just use one of the vacant rooms in the house. That's okay, right? You will listen to such a request, won't you?" Since my husband was hardly at home, there should have been no reason to object. I took it for granted that he would agree. But the unexpected reply was, "Just leave that half-dead old man alone. I'm not going to let someone like that into the house. It'll ruin the atmosphere." "Absolutely not. If you want to do that, you can leave. I have no intention of living with a sick person." My request was flatly denied, and I felt like I had fallen into a gaping hole in the ground. In my heart, I screamed, "If you want, the shed is fine. Don't mock me. Our house is quite large, and there is no problem if my father moves in. After cleaning up a room, we can live without facing each other. My husband really holds feelings for me and my family that are less than that for a pet. Well then, I will seriously clean and renovate the storage shed. If the storage shed is cleaned, it can be used just like a normal room. There is meaning in living with my father now." However, my husband remained adamant, saying, "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" Recalling the major renovation I did for my mother-in-law, I decided not to rely on such a demon-like man anymore. Since then, I worked more than ever and visited my father when I had the time. Some days he seemed to be doing well, and other days he seemed to be doing badly. I couldn't feel alive every day unless I saw my father's face. I was only praying for my father's illness to be cured. Miraculously, my prayers seemed to be heard, as my father was still alive after 6 months. A bright light seemed to shine, and I started to live positively, little by little. About half a year after my father's confession, my husband came back with a pale face. I sensed that something serious had happened because he had never come back early since we got married. "Sit down. I have important news. I was told that I have cancer, and my life expectancy is short." Come to think of it, my husband had been looking pale lately. I thought it was due to drinking too much alcohol or lack of sleep. Strangely, I was not shocked. It was completely someone else's problem. Besides, everyone should take care of themselves. You were like, leave that half-dead man alone, right? I'll do just as you said. If you want me to leave, I'm leaving. Oh yes, I found a lawyer for our divorce matters. I left the room without looking back. I decided to leave suddenly, but I did not regret it at all. You don't have a penny, do you? Where do you think you're going, leaving this house? You won't be able to live a luxurious life like you have been. You have been living on everything I have worked hard for, you inhuman. Does he still think that I have been living in this house for money? I had been subjected to brainwashing through my mother-in-law and endured verbal abuse from my husband, believing that I needed to stay and protect this house. However, since learning about my father's terminal diagnosis 6 months ago, I woke up to the realization that I couldn't continue living like this. During this time, I mentally prepared myself for divorce, ready to leave the house at any moment. My husband continued to shout something in the background, but it no longer concerned me. I never aspired for a luxurious life. All I needed was the ability to eat 3 meals a day and a place to sleep. I returned to my room, packed only the essentials into my suitcase, and left the house. Whether my husband faced trouble or not, it didn't matter to me. I promptly sent the email I had drafted, resigning from my position to the company's president. I aimed to settle everything related to my husband and the West Hill family, which I had been supporting for nearly 30 years. In fact, since discussing my father's situation half a year ago, I had been in contact with a divorce specialist lawyer recommended by the company's advisory lawyer. I shared everything about our marriage, starting from events before our marriage. The lawyer listened quietly, nodding in understanding. When I mentioned that I had been working for the family business without pay, the lawyer was genuinely surprised. It would amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid salary. After finishing my story, he immediately commented that the divorce should be straightforward. I had also gathered evidence of my husband's faults, including photos of emails from other women and notes documenting serious moral harassment. Additionally, I had recorded his verbally abusive remarks on my smartphone. While that evidence was sufficient, the lawyer also provided photos of my husband's infidelity for free. He assured me that everything would go well, even if I didn't take further action. He urged me to feel like I was on a big ship and didn't need to answer the angry calls from my husband, as he would handle everything. I walked with a smile, naturally ignoring the angry calls. Amidst the calls from my husband, there were also calls from my mother-in-law, likely questioning if I planned to abandon everything when my son was in trouble. If her son was in trouble, she should take care of him herself. Although a luxurious room resembling a show home awaited her return to that house, she seemed panicked. The company started by my father-in-law was falling apart without me, who had been a crucial support. The president, who was more of a decoration due to ESS, couldn't steer the company effectively, and things were not going well. Some colleagues had reached out, asking me to come back, but I had no intention of dedicating myself to the company any longer. Despite its local significance, the number of clients would steadily decrease. While I felt sorry for letting my father-in-law's hard-earned company decline, I believed that if my husband and mother-in-law had worked as diligently as him, this wouldn't have happened. My decision to quit might have been different, and my son Matthew might have considered taking over the family business. Furthermore, my husband not only contributed little to the company, but also seemed to constantly engage in inappropriate behavior with female employees, leading to suspicions and resignations. It appears that those women are planning to sue the company for sexual harassment. Now, my husband has to handle the repercussions of the mess he created in his life, and it seems that justice is catching up with him. I desired justice for my husband and mother-in-law, wanting them to face proper consequences so that those who had worked honestly wouldn't be made to look foolish. To add to the turmoil, the company faced accusations of tax evasion by the IRS, discovered accidentally while my lawyer was investigating. Further examination revealed questionable points in the accounts, raising suspicions of my husband's embezzlement. Looking back, it was odd that he had substantial money at his disposal, considering his salary. While assisting with the accounting, I had been indifferent to my husband's financial activities, not realizing the disparity between his income and expenditures. If I had questioned where the excess funds were coming from, I would have understood the truth. In reality, he'd have been squandering the company's money, including my salary that he had transferred to his own account. Kickbacks for orders, bribes for personal gain, tax evasion, and special embezzlement. My husband's crimes were diverse. I couldn't predict whether the court's judgment or his life expectancy would come first, but I desired him to atone for as much as possible. 6 months ago, I began scrutinizing the books, copying them to preserve evidence, and submitting them to the IRS. My prior study to become an accountant proved beneficial in this endeavor. To bridge the financial gap, my husband sold the company to a major corporation and hastily disposed of the large mansion at a bargain. My mother-in-law also sold her condo to meet the IRS obligations and pay me. Now they live together in a small apartment complex, and rumors suggest my husband has several children from affairs, necessitating child support payments. Despite his age, my husband seems to have life insurance, but its adequacy is uncertain. My mother-in-law, previously condescending, now works to cover her son's medical and living expenses. The parent and child should reflect on their actions until the end. Receiving a substantial amount, I purchased a condo in a convenient location. I reunited with my father, who is now recovering, thanks to Matthew's introduction to a renowned doctor. My father had been living with Matthew, saving money for me to free me from financial burdens. Matthew, considering my father more respectable than his own, agreed to my request. Living together until the condo was secured, I chose a place close to Matthew's home. I started working at the law firm that aided me, contributing to corporate cases. Despite not being an accountant, my experience is an asset, and I'm studying to acquire a tax accountant qualification. My husband is serving an actual imprisonment sentence, relieving concerns about money or sustenance. Ironically, my mother-in-law moved into a relative's house, experiencing what it's like to be in need after acting superior for so long. Seeking justice for my mistreatment, I'm astounded by the prevalence of power and sexual harassment in various transactions. I worried about potential job losses due to the company acquisition, but it seems to have worked out for most. As everything falls into place, I savor the happiness that comes from knowing I made the right choices. Returning home from work, I find my father and another man waiting. It's my ex-boyfriend, the person I truly loved. After nearly 30 years, he welcomes me back warmly. My father, who had apologized to him when I escaped from the troubled house, knew about my ex-boyfriend. The 3 men, including Matthew, were watching over me. Now, I plan to live with these 3 men whom I genuinely love from the bottom of my heart. 9 years ago, at the age of 38, I went through a divorce from my husband Nick, who was 40 at the time. We had been married for 3 years, and he had been a good husband until a significant misunderstanding led him to leave me. Within days, he served me with divorce papers without giving me an opportunity to explain the truth. Hurt and bewildered, I didn't contest the divorce. I simply let him go. I used to be a housewife, and on one fateful day, Nick unexpectedly walked in to find my ex-boyfriend Joe, also 38, at the house with me. The 3 of us knew each other from college, and Joe and I had dated for only 3 months before I realized my true feelings for Nick. Joe had come over to invite us to his upcoming wedding in a few months. Nothing suspicious was happening. However, Nick assumed the worst, left without a word, and even blocked all communication channels. Despite my attempts to explain and reach out, Nick drove away and cut off all contact. Devastated, I spent the next 2 days in a state of panic and tears. Joe also tried to explain, but even he was blocked. I believed Nick's anger would subside, and he would return, allowing me to clarify everything. Unfortunately, that never happened, and a few days later, Nick filed for divorce. Feeling helpless, I decided not to fight for my marriage. And as the divorce proceedings began, I moved in with a friend until I could establish my independence. It took time, but I eventually got my life back on track, securing a job and moving into my own apartment. Though angry and hurt by Nick's actions, I chose to focus on rebuilding my life. Even after the divorce was finalized, I was content with the little I gained from it. I attended Joe's wedding, reconnecting with college friends, while Nick remained absent as expected. Life took an unexpected turn when I met Chris, a 40-year-old man, at the wedding. Although sparks flew, I held back due to my recent divorce. We exchanged numbers, but didn't connect for a while. A year later, in a better mental state, I encountered Chris again at a work event. 2 years into dating, we got married, and another year later, we welcomed our daughter. Now, almost 5 years since my divorce from Nick, I've evolved into a new person. Despite moving on, I was recently shocked when Nick, after all these years, appeared at my doorstep, unannounced a few days ago. The impact of his unexpected return still lingers, leaving me in a state of disbelief. I never figured out how he managed to locate me, and truth be told, I didn't bother investigating later on. It was a weekend, and my husband and I were both home with our daughter when the doorbell unexpectedly rang. My astonishment peaked when I opened the door to find Nick standing there, holding a bouquet of roses, and smiling as if the past 9 years hadn't happened. Before I could fully process the surreal situation, he began explaining that a few weeks ago, he learned from a friend that Joe was married to someone else, not me. He claimed to have realized he had overreacted back then and wanted a second chance, asking for forgiveness. I was at a loss for words. The absurdity of him divorcing me over a misunderstanding years ago, without seeking the truth, was baffling. Now, after 9 years of silence, he believed he could waltz back into my life and ask for a second chance, the very thing he had denied me back then. Fat chance. While he continued talking, I stared at him in silence, contemplating my next move. I wanted to slam the door in his face, but that wouldn't suffice. So, opting for a more impactful response, I instructed him to wait and return to the living room where my husband and daughter were waiting. Without time for explanations, I scooped up my daughter, motioned for Chris to follow, and headed back to the front door. You can imagine the scene that unfolded. Nick was visibly horrified as I approached him with my daughter in my arms and my husband behind me. I smiled and informed him that he was a bit too late to request a second chance now, asking him to leave. After a brief moment of silence, he turned and hastily retreated to his car without uttering another word. Satisfied with my actions, I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me for years. Once he was gone, I sat Chris down, recounted the encounter with Nick, and we shared a good laugh over the audacity of his belief that I would take him back without question after what he had done to me 9 years ago. I couldn't fathom why he thought it was a good idea to spring this surprise on me without doing any research first. A glance at any of my social media accounts would have revealed that I was now married with a daughter. However, I suppose he couldn't access them due to my privacy settings. Even then, he couldn't have reached out to our old friends to find out what I was up to. Chris believes he's so self-centered that he assumed I would have waited around for him after he left, hoping that he'd come back someday. It sounds like a pretty accurate assessment of his character, even though Chris has never conversed with Nick. It's been a few days since the encounter, and I hoped he would leave me alone. Yet this morning, he messaged me on Facebook from a new account, expressing how hurt he was by my actions. He claimed he genuinely wanted to apologize for the past, but felt I had made a mockery of the situation. He still feels remorse for his past actions, but believes I owe him an apology for trying to humiliate him. AITA for what I did to Nick. Update 1. I decided not to respond to Nick's message. He didn't deserve even an ounce of my sympathy or forgiveness, let alone an apology. My husband was right. Nick assumed I'd still be waiting for him and would readily accept him once he was ready to come back. He had always been self-centered, a trait I had overlooked before marrying him. There were red flags I ignored, like his discomfort with me being around other guys, even just as friends. He convinced me to quit my job and be a housewife, claiming he didn't trust anyone else to take care of our home. Despite sacrificing for him, he didn't give me a chance to explain during the divorce. I always felt Nick was excessively jealous of Joe, my first boyfriend in college. Despite being loyal, he never trusted me. After our divorce, it took me a long time to recover and give love a second chance. Some say I jumped from one relationship to another too quickly, and perhaps it's true. However, I'm glad I took that leap of faith because now I have the best husband and a beautiful daughter. I won't apologize to Nick, but I do owe him thanks. If he hadn't left me, I might still be stuck in an unhappy marriage. Update 2. I discovered a couple more details about Nick. It turns out he had deleted all his social media, and for the past few years, he had been living and working in Seoul. Consequently, he lost touch with old friends, including those from college. He returned just a month ago, got in touch with a friend who knew about Joe's marriage but not mine, and that's how he ended up on my doorstep. It's still strange that he chose to approach me after almost a decade of no contact, but I've moved on from it. He hasn't messaged me since I ignored his last message, and I doubt he will. I also informed Joe about the incident, and he was just as shocked at Nick's audacity. My daughter asked about the man, but I didn't disclose the truth, stating he had the wrong address, which satisfied her curiosity. I don't plan on telling her unless she discovers it on her own, which seems unlikely. Update 3. After almost a week of no contact, Nick texted me again. I had forgotten to block him, which was my oversight, but I'm busy with work and not dwelling on it. In the text, he expressed a desire to meet, claiming he doesn't mind my husband and daughter and still wants to give our relationship another shot, insinuating that I'd be willing to cheat on my husband. This was ironic, considering he left me for that reason 9 years ago. I was disgusted by his text, blocked his number, and made it clear I wanted him to leave me alone. His delusional belief that I still have feelings for him is baffling, and I find his messages repulsive. Update 4. Some accusations suggest I'm still into Nick, which is not true. I hate him, and I believe it's a natural sentiment given our history. I shared the text with Chris because I value honesty in my marriage, and I would never jeopardize it by engaging in any such behavior. I love Chris more than anything and would never knowingly let Nick back into my life. I acknowledge my habit of not checking who's at the door when my husband is home, and I'm working on changing that. Nevertheless, I would never intentionally welcome Nick back into my life. I have no desire to have him back in my life, so it's disheartening that people are making such accusations. I hope this clarifies things. Update 5. Nick showed up again, but this time, I didn't open the door without checking first. Thankfully, my daughter was out with my husband. I was caught up with work, and when I realized it was Nick, I told him through the door that he needed to leave and wasn't welcome anymore. Despite my clear message, he refused to listen. He informed me he was in town for a couple more weeks before leaving for another country, stating that this would be convenient for us to get together. I was appalled by his suggestion to cheat on my husband and gave him 3 seconds to leave. When he didn't take it seriously, I called the police, and they had to intervene. My daughter wasn't present, but I immediately informed my husband, Chris, who returned within an hour to ensure my well-being. I felt a bit shaken by the incident, but I'm okay. I don't know how he found out where I live. The friend who informed him about Joe being married wasn't close enough to me to know my marital status or address. I feel uneasy and uncomfortable in my own home. I'm fortunate that he's here for only a few more weeks, and I'm relying on that to keep him away. However, I'm more concerned about my daughter's safety. While he doesn't seem dangerous yet, I wouldn't put it past him. Even during the police intervention, he begged for one chance, showing signs of delusion. My husband and I are considering increasing security measures and seeking advice from his uncle, who works in the police, to address this unsettling situation. Update 6. I discovered how Nick traced me. One of my college friends gave my address to Nick's old friend without asking me first. She apologized several times, but I'm still upset about the situation. I haven't heard from Nick since the police escorted him away, but we're contemplating moving just in case he lied about his stay duration. Chris, and I don't want to take any risks, especially with our daughter attending school nearby. The situation has left me feeling paranoid and anxious. We're still contemplating a move, and ironically, the only thing holding us back is our daughter's love for our home. She has been upset since learning that we might have to leave. Any tips on how to handle this are welcome. Meanwhile, we're trying to find a solution that ensures our safety without compromising our current situation. Update 7. Nick has moved to Canada, confirmed by multiple sources. He's back on social media, and I've blocked the new number he used to text me. In his message, he claimed he believed something could have happened between us the day the police were involved, but implied I was too scared. He expressed a delusional hope that I would realize I still loved him, and that my husband was merely an obstacle. He even suggested adopting my daughter to demonstrate his devotion. I couldn't fathom such delusion, but at least he's gone. I'm relieved I no longer have to deal with this, and that we didn't have to move. My daughter's happiness in staying in her beloved home is what matters most. Knowing we're not in danger has lessened my worries, although we're keeping security measures in place for added reassurance. Chris and I read Nick's final message together, finding it ridiculous that he still believed I would want him after seeing my family. I shared the text with Joe, who had a similar reaction. I'm still not speaking to the friend who gave Nick my address, as her actions were irresponsible and unforgivable. Regardless, Chris and I are planning a vacation to the beach, my daughter's favorite place, to let off some steam. These past weeks have been incredibly stressful, and I feel like I've earned a break. Thanks for all the love and support, and stay tuned for more stories from Argo relationships. My mother's furious voice echoed through the house, commanding me to leave. The intensity of her anger was palpable, and she gripped a kitchen knife tightly in her hand. In her rage, she disowned me, accusing me of being a burden and not contributing to the household expenses. The irony stung, as I contributed more than half of my $3,000 monthly income to the family. Desperate to make her understand, I attempted to explain, but she remained obstinate, brandishing the knife as a chilling display of her frustration. Cautiously, I kept my distance, mindful not to provoke her further. My name is Catherine, a 29-year-old systems engineer at a major corporation. My journey into this career was inspired by my father's love for computers. Despite my successful career, a sudden turn of events shook our lives. My father, the source of my inspiration, suffered a subarachnoid hemorrhage, leading to immediate surgery. Although the operation was successful, the aftermath hinted at lasting effects, raising concerns about our financial stability without his income. While I dedicatedly juggled my demanding job and caregiving responsibilities, my mother's priorities shifted. Instead of offering support, she focused on my father's ability to return to work during his recovery. Witnessing his struggles, I suggested I take on the role of caregiver, but my mother dismissed the idea, citing her busy schedule. Returning home to care for my father, I found myself shouldering not only caregiving duties, but also the entire burden of household chores. Despite her initial claims of self-sufficiency, my mother had neglected the chores, leaving me overwhelmed with the responsibilities. Juggling work, caregiving, and household tasks became a daunting challenge. Meanwhile, my father, though physically weaker, expressed gratitude and apologized for the trouble. Undeterred, I reassured him and cherished the moments spent together. Despite my efforts, my mother continued to criticize, finding fault in my cooking and questioning my commitment as a daughter. Determined to address her concerns about my father's nutrition, I adjusted my approach, preparing smaller dishes to accommodate his changed appetite. After increasing the variety of dishes, my mom remained silent. A few days later, she complained that there were too many dishes in the meals, citing my parents' age and their inability to consume such quantities. She questioned my ability to save money, noting that I had been living alone until now. In response, I explained that I added more side dishes not because she instructed me to do so, but to prevent Dad from getting tired of the food and to stimulate his appetite. Mom accused me of having an attitude, as if she had been constantly nagging and undoing my efforts. Reluctantly, she moved to the sofa and demanded coffee. As I cleaned up, she threw a cushion at me, insisting I hurry up and make coffee, claiming that I'm always at home, not working, and just after Dad's retirement money. Despite my attempts to clarify that I work from home, she failed to understand. In her perception, I apparently moved back home under the pretense of taking care of Dad, without contributing to living expenses, despite my efforts in caring for Dad, earning money for our living expenses, and managing all the housework. She believed I was misusing Dad's retirement money. Frustrated and reaching my limit, feeling sorry for Dad but unable to continue living in the same house, I accompanied him to physical therapy a few days later. The doctor's encouragement was overshadowed by the sight of Mom hastily leaving home with large bags upon our return. The next day, I discovered that all my cherished bags and accessories were gone. Confronting Mom, I questioned if she had entered my room. Justifying her actions, she claimed it was her house, and she could enter any room. I inquired about a luxury brand bag she had, criticizing her spending on such items despite advising me not to waste money. Angry and upset, I learned that she had sold my bags and accessories without consulting me. The significant amount of money was used for her own hobbies. Shouting in frustration, I demanded the return and repayment. However, my mom, transformed into a figure of anger, yelled back, unable to believe her own daughter was talking back, resembling a confrontation with a demon. During my childhood, I obediently listened to my parents and worked hard for them. Now, as an adult, I find myself taking care of them. Despite my requests for my mom to contribute in caring for Dad, she claims to be doing her part while, in reality, she is the one receiving the most care. It's disheartening to witness my dad, who has resigned himself to the lack of care from my mom, still making efforts to communicate with her, only to have her vanish when he starts talking. Lost in contemplation, I confronted my mom, who remained silent. Suddenly, she turned away from me, stormed to the kitchen, and returned with a kitchen knife, a furious expression on her face. In a fit of rage, she demanded that I leave, accusing me of being a parasitic leech, waiting for my dad's retirement money. Frustrated by the realization that my efforts and words were falling on deaf ears, I decided it was time to find a new place and swiftly move out. Slowly distancing myself from my mother, I rushed into my room when she made no attempt to follow. Despite expecting not to feel sadness due to her usual emotional distance, tears welled up, fueled by intense anger. Swiftly, I began preparations to move out. I sought assistance from a colleague at work who had connections in real estate. With their help, I quickly found a new place. During my free time, I packed my belongings into boxes. When everything was ready, I'd opened up to my dad about my mother's behavior. He expressed regret and apologized, acknowledging that he had sensed something was amiss but struggled to address it. He revealed that my mom had treated him poorly too, and he was contemplating a divorce. Grateful for my support, he thanked me and agreed with my decision to move out. A few days later, when my mom was away at her hula dance classes and lunch with friends, we seized the opportunity to move. Movers arrived on a Wednesday morning when we were confident she wouldn't be home. As our belongings were loaded onto the truck, a sense of sadness crept in. In a rented car, my dad and I embarked on our journey to escape my mom's toxic environment. He questioned if it was the right choice, suggesting I could have taken the chance to be free from caregiving. Assuring him it was the right decision, I expressed how happy living with him made me feel. The move was completed by the afternoon, and over takeout lunch we reminisced. I apologized for the convenience store lunch boxes, and my dad shared that we used to eat them often before my return. Even the simplest conversations made the meal taste delicious. After a break, we began unpacking and settling into our new life. Just as we were getting accustomed to the change, the phone rang. It was my mom. I answered the call, and my mother immediately panicked, questioning why our belongings were gone. I calmly informed her that Dad and I had made the decision to move out together. Concerned about living expenses without Dad's pension and retirement fund, she doubted our ability to afford a high-rise condo. I reassured her, explaining that I had a stable job and contributed financially to the family. However, she accused me of spending Dad's retirement fund on designer bags, despite my clarification that I had been supporting the family. I reminded her that Dad had tried to communicate my job situation to her, but she had never listened. Money was her primary concern, and her financial management was careless. Growing impatient, Dad dropped a bombshell. We were getting a divorce. Mom panicked about her living expenses, but Dad assured her that she could live freely without interference. He mentioned sending divorce papers for her to sign later and hung up without further explanation. Dad apologized for making me feel bad, and I expressed my gratitude. The next day, we headed to the hospital for Dad's appointment. Unexpectedly, we found my mother waiting near the entrance. She approached, inquiring about the previous day's phone call and asserting that she wouldn't allow us to live in a nice place by ourselves. Suddenly, she grabbed my hand, insisting on living in the high-rise too. Despite my calm demeanor, she refused to accept our decision. I asked her to let me live my own life, but she persisted, leading me to threaten calling the police. Eventually releasing her grip, she hurriedly left as hospital staff and security approached. I apologized for the commotion, attributing it to my mother's actions. A subsequent argument took place, and as I observed my mother's back near the hospital entrance, she seemed weaker than usual. In the days that followed, she tried to find us around the hospital, but only confronted people she perceived as weaker. After being chased away by security guards and assertive patients, she stopped showing up. That hospital encounter marked the last time I saw my mother. Subsequently, my father consulted a lawyer and actively pursued the divorce process. Unhappy about the divorce, my mother made a fuss demanding money. The lawyer explained alimony, but when she realized she wouldn't receive any, she resorted to tears and begging. The lawyer directed her to financial assistance centers, and the divorce process continued. Eventually, the divorce was finalized, and my father decided to sell the house. Initially opposed to the idea, my mother changed her stance upon learning she would receive money from the property division. After selling the house, our lives became more peaceful. Juggling work, caregiving, and housekeeping, I found support in daytime caregivers, and Dad's condition gradually improved. One day, my mother called, requesting money. I declined, stating that I couldn't provide more and asking her to leave us alone. Despite changing my number to stop her calls, she persisted using different numbers. Later, I heard from mutual acquaintances that she was living in a small apartment, working part-time, and barely managing on her own. Dad, upon hearing this, remarked that she had finally learned to stand on her own 2 feet. Reflecting quietly, I admitted that he might have spoiled her too much. When I asked if he was happy now, he thanked me and apologized for the trouble life had caused me. I'm Chloe, an architect by profession, and in that moment, I was a bride walking down the aisle. Every detail of my wedding had been meticulously planned, from the flower arrangements to the playlist that would serenade us through the night. I had always envisioned this day as a scene straight out of a romance novel, where love conquers all. Jack, my fiancé, stood at the altar with a nervous smile. An engineer, logical and straightforward, the yin to my creative yang. I believed we complemented each other well, excited to embark on this new chapter of life together. However, as our eyes met, I noticed a distant look in Jack's eyes, almost burdened. Dismissing it as nervousness, I proceeded down the aisle. Yet my unease deepened when my would-be mother-in-law, Linda, leaned over to her neighbor, whispering something with narrowed eyes, sizing me up. When our eyes met, she forced a smile, mouthing, "You look beautiful," but the smile didn't reach her eyes. As the ceremony continued, and the pastor asked if Jack took me to be his lawfully wedded wife, there was an agonizing pause before he finally said, "I do." However, his eyes lacked the warmth I had always associated with those words. During the ring exchange, Linda stood up, taking a photo, declaring loudly that we must capture the moment, stating that weddings are just the first day of a lifelong commitment. Her words more a warning than a blessing. At the reception, Linda approached me with a saccharine tone, commenting on my unconventional dress and hinting at my rebellious nature, trying to keep the atmosphere light. I responded, I believe weddings are a celebration of love, so why stick to convention? Yet Jack's intervention, though momentarily relieving, carried a resignation that shouldn't be present on such a joyous day. As the first dance began, Jack held me at arm's length, our bodies swaying in rhythm but our souls feeling miles apart. The song, meant to be an anthem of our love, mocked me, and Jack's question, "So, Mrs. Chloe, ready for forever?" echoed in the cavernous space between us. Unsure of what forever held, I said yes, hoping the ominous cloud hanging over us would lift. Little did I know, this was just the prelude to a saga that would test not just my marriage, but the very core of who I was. The feeling that something had already come to an end lingered, even as everyone raised their glasses to toast our new beginning. After the wedding, returning to my cozy 3-bedroom dwelling, purchased with years of hard work, was supposed to be our sanctuary. But the walls that I thought would protect us turned into a prison, a stage for domestic warfare. Linda's subtle invasion began, marked by frequent unannounced visits and relentless criticism, culminating in the shocking announcement that she would be living with us. As she claimed a corner of what was once my reading nook, my heart sank, and I looked at Jack, pleading for him to intervene. I managed to pull him aside, my voice quivering. This is our home, and we should have discussed this before any decision was made. He looked at me, his eyes void of the love I thought I had seen just a few months ago. Mom's getting older, Chloe. She shouldn't be alone. She should be with family, he said, emphasizing the last word, as if I weren't considered family. So I'm not family. Is that what you're saying? I questioned, feeling the hot sting of tears starting to form. You know that's not what I mean, he retorted, clearly exasperated. But Mom has done a lot for me, and I owe her this much. What about what we owe each other? We just got married, Jack. This is supposed to be our time to grow as a couple, not play house with your mom. But my arguments fell on deaf ears. The decision was made just like that. My opinion, my feelings, my home, none of it seemed to matter. And so Lyndon moved in, turning the love nest I had envisioned into a battlefield of egos, tensions, and outright hostility. Every room in the house felt heavier, suffocated by her presence. I could no longer find a quiet corner to read, a peaceful moment to reflect, or even a loving glance from the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. That's how I realized I wasn't just fighting for my marriage or my home. I was fighting for my identity, my dignity, and my peace of mind. All the while, a single thought echoed through my head. How did it come to this? How did my life, my home, my choices become secondary to the whims of someone else? My reading nook was now a shrine to Linda's possessions, my kitchen a stage for her criticisms, and my husband, well, he was a stranger siding with the enemy. And all of this was just the beginning. If I thought life was hard before, it was nothing compared to the living nightmare that followed. The atmosphere in the house grew denser each day, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. What made it even worse was the undeniable 2 blue lines on the pregnancy test I held in my trembling hands. I had always imagined sharing the news of my first pregnancy as a moment of joy, an occasion to be cherished. But as I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, eyes red from restrained tears, I realized this milestone had turned into a millstone around my neck. When I told Jack about the pregnancy, his response was as lackluster as ever. Well, that's something, he mumbled before quickly changing the topic to discuss a home improvement project his mother had suggested. It was Linda, of course, who took the reins of my pregnancy as though it were her divine mission. She began dictating my diet, my activities, and even the hospital where I would deliver. But her intrusion didn't stop at unsolicited advice. She managed to turn my pregnancy into another venue for her psychological warfare. "You're eating again," she would say, her eyes darting towards the modest sandwich I'd made for myself. Shouldn't you be careful about gaining weight during pregnancy? This is doctor recommended, Linda. I'd reply, mustering all the patience I had left. Doctors these days don't know what they're talking about. Back in my time, we knew how to handle pregnancies, she'd counter. And so it continued. As the weeks went by, my energy waned, but Linda's expectations soared. She turned my home into her personal palace, ordering me to clean, cook, and cater to her needs as if I were a servant rather than a daughter-in-law, and a pregnant one at that. "Chloe, why haven't you vacuumed the living room yet?" She'd yell from her self-assigned throne, my old reading nook where she'd spend hours scrolling through her phone or watching daytime TV. "I've been feeling really tired today, Linda. The doctor advised me to take it easy," I said, my voice tinged with desperation. Tiredness during pregnancy isn't an illness, you know. Jack once again remained conspicuously silent, his compliance deafening. The tension reached a breaking point during another heated dinner discussion, where Linda decided to critique my choice of baby names. "That's a ridiculous name for a child. You might as well pin a kick me sign on his back for his entire school life," Linda sneered. "Enough is enough, Linda. This is my child, and I have a say in how to raise him or her," I snapped, my patience finally depleted. "Oh, so now you're talking back to me." Linda's eyes flared, her voice escalating. Jack intervened, but not in the way I had hoped. "Chloe, you're being emotional. Mom's just giving her opinion," he said. I looked at him, then at Linda, and then at the house that had turned into a nightmare. I felt trapped, humiliated, and utterly alone. I could barely recognize the woman staring back at me in the reflection of my tarnished wedding ring, a woman who was slowly losing everything she had once valued: her home, her dignity, and most devastatingly, her will to fight. And that's when it happened, the ultimate betrayal. Linda, filled with venomous triumph, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you can't handle a simple family discussion, maybe you shouldn't be a part of this family." Jack said nothing. His silence spoke volumes, cutting deeper than any words ever could. In that moment, I realized that my nightmare wasn't unfolding. It had already unfolded, and I was living in it. My life had become an unrecognizable maze of shattered hopes and suppressed sobs. I moved like a zombie through the rooms that no longer felt like my home. The baby inside me seemed to be the only living part of my existence, and I clung to that tiny spark of life as my last shred of hope. But even that was threatened. One cold evening marked my breaking point. We were having another one of those god-awful family dinners, where tension cut through the air like a knife. I had spent hours on my feet cooking a meal that I knew Linda would find fault with, no matter how perfect it was. Each critique was a jab, each scoff a slap. I knew another one was coming, and I braced myself for it. But when it finally came, it was worse than anything she'd said before. "You really think you're fit to be a mother if you can't even manage a household? What are you going to do with a baby?" Linda sneered. My heart sank into my stomach, each word a stab at my already fragile self-esteem. I felt my hands tremble, my eyes blur. But before I could say anything, Jack joined in, sealing my emotional fate. "Mom has a point, Chloe. You need to step it up. We're going to be parents soon." That was it, the final straw. A bolt of anger mixed with a lifetime's worth of resentment and humiliation surged through me. "Step it up, step it up," I shouted, surprising even myself with the intensity of my voice. "I am carrying our child for months, managing our house, and putting up with relentless emotional abuse from your mother, and you tell me to step it up." Both Jack and Linda looked stunned, but I was on a roll. A volcano finally erupting after years of suppression. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice cracking. "I won't raise my child in an environment where their mother is treated like dirt. If you two are what family means, then I don't want any part of it." With that, I left the table, leaving them both in speechless disbelief. I packed a small bag and headed for the door, my trembling hands struggling to turn the doorknob. That's when Linda decided to deliver her ultimate blow. "Where do you think you're going? This is Jack's house, not yours." I turned around, my eyes locking onto hers. Actually, Linda, this is my house. I bought it, and I have every right to say who stays and who leaves. Chloe, don't do this. Let's talk about it, Jack pleaded, finally realizing the gravity of what was happening. There's nothing left to talk about, I said, tears streaming down my face. With that, I stepped out into the frigid night air, no coat, no plan, just an overwhelming urge to escape. As the door shut behind me, it felt like the closing chapter, the final act of a tragedy that had stretched on for too long. I began to walk, each step a painful reminder of the life I was leaving behind. I had no idea where I was going, but it didn't matter. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control of my destiny. But the cost of my newfound freedom was high, agonizingly high. The icy wind pierced through my thin clothes as I trudged along the deserted streets. I had walked for what felt like miles, lost in a haze of emotional and physical exhaustion. I was almost there, almost at my parents' house. A sanctuary from the hell my life had become, when my foot caught on an uneven slab of pavement. I stumbled, twisting my ankle painfully as I fell to the ground. The pain was sharp, but it couldn't match the ache in my heart. Limping and teary-eyed, I finally made it to my parents' doorstep. The look of horror on their faces as they opened the door told me everything I needed to know. My breaking point had come, a long overdue fracture in a life burdened with far too many cracks. As they rushed me to the hospital, I knew something had to change. I couldn't go back, not to the house, not to Jack, and certainly not to the woman I had become. My breaking point wasn't just an end, it was also a beginning, a painful but necessary step toward reclaiming the life that had been taken from me. Hospital rooms have a peculiar way of forcing reality upon you. As I lay there, my sprained ankle elevated, and my body checked for any complications due to my fall. I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. My parents were there, their faces etched with concern and quiet fury over what had transpired. They'd always suspected that my marriage was far from ideal, but the depths of its dysfunction had finally been laid bare. Chloe's sweetheart, what are you going to do now? My mom finally broke the silence, her voice heavy with worry. I don't know, Mom, but what I do know is that I can't go back to that life. Not now, not ever, I replied, my own voice firmer than I expected. My dad, who had been pacing the room, finally spoke. Your mother and I will support whatever decision you make, but you need to think about your future and the future of your child, he said. I nodded, having been doing nothing but thinking, my mind a labyrinth of potential scenarios, each one fraught with uncertainty but also tinged with the promise of freedom. It was then that my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jack. Chloe, where are you? We need to talk. Ignoring the text, I switched off my phone. Whatever he had to say, it was too little, too late. I was done talking. My actions would speak louder than his words ever could. My first move was a call to a family lawyer, a decisive step in putting an end to my disastrous marriage. With my parents by my side, we discussed divorce proceedings, child custody, and alimony. There was something chillingly clinical about dissecting a failed relationship in legal terms, but it also instilled in me a sense of empowerment. For the first time, I was taking control of my life, making choices that prioritized my well-being and that of my unborn child. A week later, Jack and Linda were served divorce papers and a notice of eviction from the house. My house. The lawyer also included a clause for a hefty child support payment and financial compensation for the emotional distress I had endured. It felt drastic but necessary, a harsh severing of the bonds that had chained me for so long. When I finally turned my phone back on, I was bombarded by a flurry of messages and missed calls from Jack. Chloe, please, can we talk about this? I didn't realize how bad things had gotten. Followed by another message, I'm sorry, Chloe. I never wanted any of this to happen. Let's find a way to make it right. For a fleeting moment, I was tempted to call him back, to hear him out. But then I remembered the long nights of humiliation, the years of emotional neglect, and Linda's insidious cruelty that he had silently endorsed. Any affection I had for him was now buried under the ruins of our broken marriage. I deleted the messages, erased his number, and blocked him on all social media platforms. As far as I was concerned, Jack was now part of my past, a painful chapter in a book I was ready to close. I knew the journey ahead would be filled with its own set of challenges. Divorce proceedings are never simple, especially when a child is involved. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was steering the course of my own life. A painful journey, but one that led away from the darkness that had consumed me and towards a future that, while uncertain, held the promise of something better. The courtroom had that sterile, cold air that seems exclusive to places where lives can change in an instant. My lawyer sat next to me, a stack of papers in front of her, radiating confidence. My parents were behind me, their moral support palpable across the room. Jack sat with a look of defeated bewilderment, his mother Linda beside him, her face a mask of indignant disbelief. "All rise," the bailiff announced, and Judge Morrison entered the room. The divorce proceeding was a whirlwind of legalese, a barrage of facts and accusations laid bare for the court to dissect. As the evidence of Linda's abusive behavior and Jack's neglect was presented, I watched their faces contort, perhaps truly seeing themselves for the first time through the eyes of the law and through my eyes. The judge turned to Linda. "Mrs. Davis, you stand accused of emotional abuse and harassment. The evidence is overwhelming. How do you plead?" "Your Honor, this is all taken out of context. I was only looking out for my son's well-being," Linda stammered, her voice lacking its usual arrogance. "It appears your definition of well-being is quite twisted," Judge Morrison retorted, clearly unimpressed. Finally, the judge rendered her verdict. "The court hereby grants Chloe Davis a full divorce from Jack Davis. Custody of the unborn child will be given to Chloe. Jack Davis, you are required to pay child support as determined by the state. And Mrs. Linda Davis, considering the extensive evidence of your emotional abuse and harassment, I'm fining you $100,000 for your actions." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as the gavel came down, but it was a bittersweet relief. My marriage had ended, not with a bang, but with a quiet rustling of legal papers. I was free, but at a cost I never could have imagined when I said, "I do." As we left the courtroom, Jack approached me, a lost look in his eyes. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. I never thought we'd end up here." I stared at him, seeing the man I had once thought I would spend my life with, and all I felt was a void where love used to be. "I didn't think so either, Jack, but here we are." "It's too late for sorry now," I said, turning my back on him and walking away. Linda tried to make eye contact as I passed her, perhaps seeking some form of acknowledgement or forgiveness, but I gave her none. She had taken so much from me. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she still mattered. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the sun seemed a little brighter, the world a bit more colorful. It was as if I was seeing everything through new eyes not clouded by constant anxiety and emotional distress. It was the beginning of a new chapter for me, one written on my own terms. My mother hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. "You did it, Chloe. You're free, and it's all thanks to you and Dad." "I couldn't have gone through this without your support," I replied, grateful beyond words. "We'll always be here for you," Dad said, joining in the group hug. "And for your new beginning." That night, I sat alone in my house, the house that was now truly mine, and felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. For the first time in years, the only expectations I had to live up to were my own. I was still apprehensive about the challenges that lay ahead. After all, I was going to be a single mother with all the responsibilities that entailed. But as I touched my belly, feeling the gentle stirrings of my unborn child, I knew it would be okay. My painful journey had led me to this reckoning, and while scars remained, they were now a part of a story of survival, not defeat. I was ready for whatever came next, not because I had to be, but because I chose to be, and that made all the difference. My sister-in-law, now mute and bedridden, was entrusted to my care by my in-laws, who had decided to take a vacation in Hawaii. Just before departing, my husband Jack made it clear that taking care of her was my responsibility, emphasizing that I shouldn't slack off. As soon as Jack and his family left for their vacation, my sister-in-law, surprisingly, sat up and suggested that we get going too. My name is Lisa, and at 29, I had abandoned my teenage dream of becoming a pop star, realizing its fleeting nature. I ended up in my late 20s, dating Jack, whom I met through a friend, largely due to my mother's persistent desire to see her grandchild. Jack, despite having once aspired to enter the entertainment industry, now worked at a prestigious trading company in downtown Manhattan. After college, I had worked at a bank until I got married, at which point I quit my job. On a visit to Jack's parents' house, I learned about his younger sister Lucy, who, as a child, had contracted encephalitis from influenza, leaving her mute and bedridden due to brain damage. Lucy's mother had primarily cared for her, but surprisingly, Lucy and I got along well, communicating through sign language. Over time, I naturally picked up sign language, and our bond strengthened. Despite this, my mother-in-law, who was quite different from Lucy, was consistently sarcastic and critical of me. Jack and I lived in a condo about 30 minutes away, yet my mother-in-law would occasionally show up unannounced, nitpicking and issuing traditional instructions like keeping Jack's shoes clean and neatly folding laundry. She referred to Jack as Jackie and insisted on outdated practices, such as not going to bed before him, regardless of how late he got home. During our dating and early marriage days, Jack had always been kind and never disagreed with me, despite his mother's influence. Initially, Jack was incredibly considerate. If I mentioned feeling unwell and suggested having dinner outside, he readily agreed. Likewise, if I expressed interest in a designer bag, he would purchase it for me the following month. However, approximately a year into our marriage, Jack began to change, or perhaps reverted to his former self. He started coming home late from work, consistently smelling of alcohol. On weekends, Jack claimed increasing work responsibilities, making him too busy for family time. Oddly, even during visits to his parents' home, he would decline my invitations to join him. Frustrated, I decided to confront him about the growing distance between us. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I expressed. Jack glared briefly before dismissing my concerns. "That's not true. You're overthinking things," he replied. Unconvinced, I pointed out that he rarely spoke to me anymore. He told me to stop bringing it up and walked away, ending the conversation abruptly. One Sunday, Jack surprised me by announcing he was going home. This was a departure from his usual refusal to have me accompany him on such visits. Eagerly, I offered to join him, expressing a desire to see Lucy as well. Jack's reaction was mixed, and he remarked on our seemingly close friendship. Despite his subtle grimace, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. Along the way, we stopped at a bakery to buy pastries as a gift. Jack's mother, who typically frowned at my presence, lit up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, she greeted us with a frown, as if displeased to see me. Undeterred, I handed her the pastries, and her expression changed like a child receiving a cherished toy. Curious about Jack's father, I inquired about him, learning he was out at a meeting. Jack's mother asked if I needed something, to which I replied that I didn't, just having something on my mind. He replied, "I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked. Jack retorted, "It's none of your business." "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging?" His mother chimed in, "Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." Recognizing the futility of arguing, I chose not to respond. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. "Oh, Jack, you're here," she said. Jack seized the opportunity, saying, "Sis, perfect timing. I have something to discuss." She inquired, "What is it?" Jack proposed, "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii." "How about you, sis?" She replied, "I'll pass. I don't have a passport. I was taken aback. Jack, usually busy with work, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. Concerned, I asked, Jack, is everything all right with your job? His mother seemed displeased with my involvement and said, You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made. You're really nosy, aren't you? Jack's mother then revealed the real reason for the meeting. I was to take care of Lucy during their vacation. Though momentarily surprised, I realized staying with Lucy was more appealing than going to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. I agreed to take care of Lucy, but I questioned why they had to bring me all the way there for such a discussion. Jack explained he expected resistance and wanted his mother to convince me forcefully if needed. Dumbfounded, I left the room to go to Lucy's room. Lucy was delighted to see me and asked how I'd been. When I explained Jack asked me to come along to their parents' house, Lucy remarked on Jack's change in behavior. Lucy suggested I stay over, and we had a great time chatting. An hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. Lucy gave me a slight wink, hinting at a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Despite not going to Hawaii, I brought luggage to stay with Lucy for a week. As departure neared, the family insisted that taking care of Lucy was my job, and my mother-in-law added, Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault. Unfazed, I returned to Lucy's room. At that moment, Lucy sprang up energetically and called out, Come on, let's get going. This echoed a recent conversation where Lucy revealed she could walk and converse, a secret she had kept since last year. I suppose, why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family? Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale, saying, Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side. Surprised by this revelation, and considering the usual coldness from my mother-in-law towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think, I thought so. Is that so? Lucy confirmed, Yeah, my mom despises me. And I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't. Curious about her father's knowledge, I asked, And your father? Lucy explained, Dad knows everything. He's always on my side. Understanding the situation, I said, I see. That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too. Perplexed, I asked, what do you mean? Lucy explained, I mean I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort. Her proposal caught me completely off guard, and I responded, What? I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy. But do you even have a passport? Confidently, Lucy revealed, Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours. Excited about the unexpected turn of events, I said, I see. I'm really looking forward to this. That's how we ended up at the airport, Lucy and I, arriving in Hawaii early in the morning. My father-in-law, who had been supportive, was there to see us off. Expressing gratitude, I said, Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered. He reassured me, saying, Don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy. After landing, we took a taxi from the airport and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room, and as we settled in, I mentioned to Lucy, Your father seems pretty well traveled. Lucy shared, Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times. Planning a surprise for Jack and the family, Lucy said, So what's the plan? I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them. Excited about the idea, I replied, That sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from jet lag? Lucy agreed. That sounds like a good idea. Unable to sleep on the plane, we took a shower, climbed into bed, and quickly fell asleep. Waking up around late afternoon, Lucy was already awake and starting to wear makeup. Apologizing for sleeping too much, I reassured her, no, don't worry about it. I just woke up too. We really had a good sleep, didn't we? Fully recharged and ready for our battle. Around 7 o'clock, I suggested, I'll go and check the restaurant. As I looked for Jack and his party, I found them dining joyfully from the shadows near the entrance. Venturing deeper into the restaurant, I spotted the back of a young woman I didn't recognize. This puzzled me, as there hadn't been such a woman when they left Jack's parents' house. Straining my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. I'm glad it's not that woman today. Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her. My mother-in-law was giving the woman a smile she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and see the woman's fate, but I held it in. I returned to my room and told Lucy that it took a while. I'm sorry, I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before. What? I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival as we were sitting quite close. We could hear their conversation, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile, a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here? And how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time. Lucy, when did you regain your ability to speak?" "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year." "Then why did you hide it until now?" "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa," Jack retorted. "That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up. "Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims," he barked. Jack was the one making absurd claims, so I retaliated. "Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described being with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket. So, I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment," I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. "Lisa, dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Jack. This woman is not involved with Jack," she pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her." "Isn't that exciting?" I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded, "Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal." My company has strict rules about this, he implored. What's that? You don't sound sorry at all, I replied. Jack appeared taken aback, then tried again. Lisa, I beg you. Forgive me. If my company finds out, I'll lose my job, he confessed. Though your place sounds better now, I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman, I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading, Please forgive my son, tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home. Hearing this, Jack cried out at the top of his lungs. Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation. At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Lucy and I were also surprised by the turn of events. I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me, who was very easy to talk to. I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she'd assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman. She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the 2. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, What do you want? I don't want to see your faces. Jack replied in a thin voice, I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job, and the woman ran away. I don't even have money for food. My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper. I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you. My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you. And even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave. After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of bad energy from my house.